When a struggling artist crashes the wrong billionaire's penthouse and shares one forbidden kiss, she thinks she can disappear into the night until he offers her a contract she can't refuse. 3 months. One lie. A dying grandmother's last wish. But in Daniel Hayes' world of power and secrets, nothing stays fake for long. What starts as a desperate arrangement becomes the kind of love that could destroy them both, or save them. Will you stay until the end to see if they survive the fall? Drop a like and comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. The champagne glass shattered against marble before Lena Carter even realized she'd dropped it. She stood frozen in the doorway of what was definitely, absolutely, catastrophically, not her friend Maya's apartment. The penthouse stretched before her like something from a magazine she'd never be able to afford. Floor-to-ceiling windows framing the Manhattan skyline. Furniture that probably cost more than her yearly rent. And worst of all, a man standing 20 feet away in the open kitchen, staring at her like she'd just materialized from thin air. Lena started, then stopped. Her brain had apparently decided to take a vacation at the exact moment she needed it most. The man didn't move. He was tall, maybe 6'2", wearing a white dress shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows and dark slacks that fit him like they'd been tailored by someone who charged by the thread. His hair was dark, slightly disheveled in that way that was either carefully calculated or genuinely exhausted. She couldn't tell which. What she could tell was that he was somewhere in his early 30s, unfairly attractive, and currently looking at her like she'd broken into Fort Knox wearing a glitter dress and heels she could barely walk in. "The door was open," Lena blurted, which was true but sounded ridiculous even to her own ears. "My friend Maya, she said penthouse party, and I got off on the wrong floor, I think, and the door was actually open, so I thought." "The door," the man repeated slowly, "was open." "Yes." Lena took a step back, her heel crunching on broken glass. She looked down at the mess she'd made on his pristine floor and felt her face burn. "I'm so sorry, I'll clean that up. I'll pay for it. I mean, not right now, obviously, but I can. It's fine." His voice was quieter than she expected. Controlled. Everything about him seemed controlled, actually, from the way he stood to the careful blankness of his expression. But there was something underneath it, something that looked almost like exhaustion. Lena forced herself to meet his eyes. They were gray, she noticed. Storm cloud gray. "I really am sorry. I'll just go." She turned toward the door, tried to take a step, and her heel caught in the hem of her dress. For one horrible, suspended moment, she felt herself tipping backward, arms windmilling uselessly, the skyline tilting at a nauseating angle. Then hands caught her waist, strong hands, steady hands, hands that kept her from crashing into the glass-covered floor and probably saved her from a trip to the emergency room. Lena gasped, her own hands flying up to grab his forearms for balance. The fabric of his shirt was soft under her fingers. She could feel the warmth of his skin through it, the solid muscle beneath. He'd moved fast, faster than she would have thought possible. And now he was right there, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something clean and expensive and completely unfamiliar. "Careful," he said, and his voice was different now, softer, almost gentle. She looked up. He was already looking down. Those gray eyes were closer than they'd been a moment ago, close enough that she could see the faint lines at their corners, the dark sweep of his lashes, the slight tension in his jaw. "I'm not usually this much of a disaster," Lena heard herself say. Her heart was hammering so hard she was sure he could feel it through her ribs. "I know how that sounds, but I swear, you're fine." His hands were still on her waist. Her hands were still on his arms. Neither of them had moved. "I should," Lena started, but she didn't finish the sentence because she didn't actually know what she should do. Leave, probably, definitely, immediately. But she didn't move. Neither did he. Later, she would try to figure out who leaned in first. She would replay the moment 1,000 times, analyzing it frame by frame, looking for the exact second when everything changed. But in that moment, with the city lights blurring behind them and the sound of her pulse roaring in her ears, all she knew was that the distance between them was disappearing. His mouth met hers softly at first, tentatively, like a question. Lena answered it. She didn't mean to. She'd sworn off men 6 months ago after her last relationship imploded spectacularly. She'd promised herself she was done with complications, done with mistakes, done with letting her heart make decisions her brain would regret later. But apparently her brain had fully checked out for the evening, because instead of pulling away, she was kissing him back. And it wasn't just any kiss. It was the kind of kiss that made her forget where she was, forget that she'd broken into a stranger's apartment, forget that this was probably the worst decision she'd made in a year full of bad decisions. His hands tightened on her waist, pulling her closer, and she let him, her fingers sliding from his forearms to his shoulders to the back of his neck. He tasted like whiskey and something darker, something that made her want to keep tasting him. One of his hands moved from her waist to her face, his thumb brushing along her cheekbone with a gentleness that made her chest ache. She felt like she was falling again, but this time there was no floor to catch her, just this moment stretching out impossibly, dangerously long. Then a sound broke through the haze, a small voice calling from somewhere deeper in the penthouse. "Daddy?" Lena jerked back so fast she nearly lost her balance again. The man, "Daddy?" steadied her automatically, but his face had changed. The softness was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like panic. "Stay here," he said quietly, already stepping away from her. "Just 1 second." He disappeared through a doorway before she could respond, leaving Lena standing alone in the middle of his living room, her lips still tingling, her heart still racing, her brain finally coming back online with all the subtlety of a freight train. "What the hell did you just do?" She pressed her hands to her face, felt the heat there, felt the way her fingers were shaking slightly. Through the doorway she could hear his voice, low and soothing, talking to what had to be a child. A young child, from the sound of it. He was a father. This gorgeous, intense stranger whose penthouse she'd invaded was a father, and she'd just kissed him like the world was ending, and now she was standing in his home wearing a dress she'd borrowed from Maya because her own clothes were too shabby for a party, and this was bad. This was so bad. Lena looked around wildly for her purse, spotted it near the door where she'd dropped it when the champagne glass slipped. She grabbed it, kicked off her heels, those death traps had caused enough trouble, and bolted. The hallway was mercifully empty. She jabbed the elevator button 17 times, her breath coming too fast, her mind spinning. The doors opened with a soft chime that sounded obscenely cheerful given the circumstances. She threw herself inside, punched the button for the lobby, and sagged against the wall as the elevator began its descent. 37 floors. She counted every one, her heart rate finally starting to slow somewhere around floor 22. What had she been thinking? She hadn't been thinking. That was the problem. She'd walked into the wrong apartment, made a complete fool of herself, broken something expensive, nearly broke herself, and then kissed a complete stranger. A stranger with a kid. A stranger who probably thought she was insane, or a criminal, or both. The elevator reached the lobby. Lena stepped out, barefoot and breathless, and pushed through the revolving doors into the November cold. The doorman gave her a look. The kind of look that said he'd seen plenty of women leave this building disheveled and shoeless at midnight and wasn't impressed. But he didn't say anything. She walked 3 blocks before she stopped, realized she had no idea where she was going, and pulled out her phone with shaking hands. 17 missed calls from Maya, 8 texts asking where the hell she was. The party, the actual party, was apparently still going strong on the 33rd floor. Lena typed out a quick lie about not feeling well and heading home. Then she ordered an Uber, wrapped her arms around herself against the wind, and tried very, very hard not to think about storm gray eyes and the taste of whiskey and the way it had felt to be caught. Daniel Hayes stood in his son's doorway long after Ethan had fallen back asleep, watching the steady rise and fall of the small chest beneath the airplane-patterned comforter. 4 years old, his entire world contained in one tiny, perfect person. "Daddy?" Ethan had asked when Daniel appeared in the doorway. "I heard a noise." "Just someone at the wrong door, buddy. Go back to sleep." "Okay." Ethan had snuggled deeper into his pillow, already drifting off again with the easy trust of a child who'd never had a reason not to believe his father would keep him safe. Daniel had stood there, one hand braced against the doorframe, and waited for his heart to stop pounding. When he finally returned to the living room, it was empty. The broken glass glittered on the floor like scattered stars. The champagne bottle she'd brought, some cheap brand he didn't recognize, sat abandoned on the counter. And the woman herself was gone, disappeared as suddenly as she'd appeared. He should have felt relieved. Instead, he felt something that sat uncomfortably close to disappointment. Daniel crossed to the windows, looked out at the city below. Somewhere down there she was heading home. Probably mortified, definitely confused, absolutely certain she'd never see him again. She was wrong about that last part. He touched his mouth without meaning to, then dropped his hand and turned away from the window. He needed to clean up the glass. He needed to call building security and ask how the hell someone had gotten past the front desk and into his private elevator. He needed to check that Ethan was really asleep and not lying awake wondering about the mysterious noise. What he didn't need was to stand here thinking about a woman in a silver dress who'd stumbled into his home and kissed him like she meant it. Daniel had built his life on control. After Sarah died, after the accident that took his wife and nearly destroyed him, he'd learned to lock everything down. His emotions, his schedule, his son's safety. He didn't do spontaneous, he didn't do reckless. He definitely didn't kiss strangers in his living room while his 4-year-old slept down the hall. But he had. And for about 90 seconds, it had felt like he could breathe again. Well, the next morning arrived too early and too bright. Lena woke to sunlight streaming through the thin curtains of her studio apartment, her head pounding with the special intensity reserved for hangovers she hadn't earned. She'd barely touched her drink at the party she never actually made it to, but apparently stress and mortification had the same effect as a bottle of wine. She groaned, pulled a pillow over her face, and tried to convince herself that last night hadn't happened. It didn't work. Every detail was crystal clear. The moment she'd realized she was in the wrong place, the sound of glass shattering, the feeling of falling, those hands catching her waist, that kiss that had short-circuited her entire nervous system. And worst of all, the small voice calling "Daddy" from the other room. "You're an idiot," she told herself, muffled through the pillow. A complete and total idiot. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. Lena grabbed it without looking, assuming it was Maya demanding an explanation for why she'd bailed on the party. It wasn't. The email was from an address she didn't recognize, with a subject line that made her sit up so fast she knocked her water glass off the nightstand. Regarding last night. Lena's hands went cold. She opened it. "Ms. Carter, I hope this message finds you well. I apologize for the unorthodox method of contact, but I wanted to reach out regarding our unexpected meeting last evening. I believe we may have started off on the wrong foot, or perhaps the wrong floor, as it were. I'd like to extend an invitation to meet this afternoon to discuss the matter further. I assure you this is not about the champagne glass, which was easily replaced. If you're available, please meet me at the address below at 2 p.m. I promise this will be worth your time. Regards, Daniel Hayes." Lena read it 3 times, then she read it again. How did he know her name? How did he get her email? And what the hell did he want to discuss? She grabbed her laptop, fingers flying across the keyboard. Daniel Hayes, New York. The search results loaded, and Lena's stomach dropped through the floor. And Daniel Hayes, CEO of Hayes. Capital management, net worth. Estimated at $2.3 billion. Billionaire financier Daniel Hayes announces new philanthropic initiative. Hayes opens new headquarters in Manhattan's financial district. There were dozens of articles, hundreds of photos. Daniel Hayes at charity galas. Daniel Hayes shaking hands with politicians. Daniel Hayes looking serious and important in a perfectly tailored suit, his expression as controlled in photographs as it had been in person. "Oh no," Lena whispered. "Oh no, no, no." She'd broken into a billionaire's penthouse. She'd kissed a billionaire who somehow knew who she was and wanted to meet her, and her phone buzzed again. This time it was Maya. "Where did you go last night? You missed everything." Lena ignored it. She was staring at one particular photo of Daniel Hayes, this one from some business magazine profile. In it, he was standing in an office that overlooked the city, and in the corner of the frame, barely visible but definitely there, was a framed photo on his desk. A photo of a little boy with dark hair and gray eyes. Lena closed her laptop, opened it again, closed it. She had 2 choices. She could delete the email, pretend this never happened, and spend the rest of her life looking over her shoulder in case she accidentally ran into a billionaire at the grocery store. Or she could go to this meeting, find out what he wanted, apologize properly for the intrusion, and hopefully never have to think about this again. The third option, The one where she thought about how his hands had felt on her waist, and how his mouth had tasted, and how for 90 perfect seconds she'd felt like someone completely different. That option wasn't even on the table. At 1:47 p.m., Lena stood outside a coffee shop in Midtown, wearing the nicest outfit she owned. Black slacks that were getting a little thin at the knees and a blue sweater that Maya said brought out her eyes, and seriously reconsidering every decision that had led her to this moment. The coffee shop was one of those aggressively minimalist places where everything was white marble and exposed brick and probably cost $17 for a regular coffee. Through the window, she could see him sitting at a corner table, his back to the wall, wearing a dark suit that made him look like he'd stepped off a magazine cover. He saw her at the same moment she saw him. Their eyes met through the glass. Lena's feet refused to move. Then Daniel stood, walked to the door, and opened it himself. "Lena," he said, and hearing her name in his voice did something strange to her chest. "Thank you for coming." "How did you know my name?" The question came out sharper than she intended. "How did you get my email?" "The doorman saw you leave. He got your Uber details." Daniel held the door open wider. "I know how that sounds. I'm not in the habit of tracking down women who visit my apartment. But this is important. Is this about the glass? Because I meant it when I said I'd pay for it. It might take me a few months, but it's not about the glass." Something flickered across his face. Amusement, maybe, or something softer. "Please, just give me 10 minutes. Lena's instincts were screaming at her to run. This was weird. This was a billionaire who'd tracked her down using her Uber information. This was absolutely the beginning of a true crime podcast, but there was something in his eyes, something that looked almost like desperation, that made her step inside. They sat. Daniel ordered 2 coffees without asking what she wanted, and somehow he got her order exactly right: iced, extra cream, 1 sugar. Lena tried not to find that unsettling. "I need to ask you something," Daniel said once the waiter left, "and I need you to hear me out before you respond." "Okay," Lena said slowly. "I need someone to pretend to be my girlfriend for 3 months." The words hung in the air between them. Lena waited for the punchline. When it didn't come, she laughed, a short, sharp sound that made the couple at the next table look over. "You're serious?" "Completely. You're a billionaire. You could have any woman in this city actually date you. Why would you need someone to pretend?" Daniel's jaw tightened. "Because the woman I need isn't someone from my world. She needs to be real. Someone my grandmother will believe I could actually fall for." "Your grandmother, she's dying." The words came out flat, factual, but there was pain underneath them. "Pancreatic cancer. The doctors give her maybe 6 months, and her dying wish is to see me settled. Happy. She thinks I've been alone too long, and she's not wrong, but I don't have time to actually date someone right now, between Ethan and the company and making sure her last months are comfortable." "Ethan," Lena repeated. "That's your son." "Yes." Daniel's expression softened slightly. "He's 4. And before you ask, his mother died when he was 6 months old, car accident, drunk driver." "I'm sorry," Lena said, and meant it. "Thank you." Daniel took a breath. "My grandmother helped me raise him. She was there every night when I couldn't be. She held us together when I was falling apart. This is the only thing she's ever asked me for, and I can't give it to her. Not the real version, but I could give her the appearance of it. So you want to hire me to lie to a dying woman?" "I want to hire you to give her peace." Daniel met her eyes steadily. 3 months. Public appearances, family dinners, maybe a weekend trip or 2. You'd move into the penthouse, separate bedroom, obviously. You'd meet my grandmother, my business partners, probably some friends, and at the end of 3 months, we'd stage a quiet breakup. No drama, no scandal. You'd walk away with enough money to change your life. "How much money?" $500,000. Lena nearly fell out of her chair. "What?" $250,000 up front, another $250,000 when the contract ends, plus living expenses, a clothing allowance, and a non-disclosure agreement that protects both of us. Her mind was spinning. $500,000. She could pay off her student loans. She could stop taking freelance gigs that paid in exposure instead of actual money. She could afford an apartment that didn't have water stains on the ceiling and neighbors who fought at 3 a.m. She could breathe. "Why me?" Lena asked. "You said it yourself. You could have anyone. Why some random woman who broke into your apartment? For the first time since they'd sat down, Daniel's careful composure cracked slightly. He looked almost embarrassed. Because you're the first person who's made me feel anything in 4 years. The honesty in his voice hit her like a physical thing. Lena sat back, her hands wrapped around a coffee cup she hadn't taken a single sip from. That kiss, she said quietly. That kiss. Daniel nodded. I haven't kissed anyone since my wife died. I haven't wanted to. And then you fell into my apartment wearing a dress that probably cost $50 and made me forget every reason I've had for keeping my life closed off. It was $30, Lena said faintly. Maya let me borrow it. A smile ghosted across Daniel's mouth. My grandmother will love you. This is insane. Probably. This is the kind of thing that only happens in movies. I'm aware. Lena looked down at her coffee, watching condensation bead on the plastic cup. $500,000. 3 months. Pretend to date a billionaire who kissed like he meant it and had a 4-year-old son and a dying grandmother who just wanted to see him happy. I need to think about it, she said. Of course. Daniel pulled a business card from his jacket pocket, wrote something on the back, and slid it across the table. That's my personal number. Call me when you decide. But Lena, I need an answer by tomorrow morning. My grandmother's birthday is next week, and I'd like to introduce you then. Lena picked up the card. His handwriting was neat, controlled, like everything else about him. One more question, she said. Anything. If this is just about appearances, why did you really invite me here? You could have had your assistant send a contract. You didn't need to meet me in person. Daniel stood, buttoned his jacket, and looked at her with those storm gray eyes that had haunted her dreams last night. Because I needed to make sure last night wasn't a fluke, he said quietly. And now I know it wasn't. He left 3 $20 bills on the table for 2 cups of coffee and walked out. Lena sat there for another 20 minutes, staring at his business card, trying to convince herself that there was any universe in which accepting this offer was a good idea. She couldn't, but she also couldn't stop thinking about the way he'd said, "She held us together when I was falling apart," or the fact that he was a single father trying to give his dying grandmother one last piece of happiness, or the way her entire body had responded to his touch like it recognized something her mind hadn't caught up to yet. $500,000. 3 months. One lie. What could possibly go wrong? Maya showed up at Lena's apartment at 8 p.m. with Thai food, wine, and a determination to extract every detail about where Lena had disappeared to last night. You're being weird, Maya said, dumping containers onto Lena's tiny kitchen counter. You're never weird. You're the most normal person I know, which is actually kind of boring but also comforting. And now you're being weird, and I don't like it. I'm not being weird. You didn't come to my party. You didn't answer your phone. And when I finally tracked you down, you're sitting here staring at a business card like it's going to tell you the meaning of life. Maya grabbed the card before Lena could stop her. Daniel Hayes. Holy shit. The Daniel Hayes? Give that back. You know Daniel Hayes? How do you know Daniel Hayes? Why do you have his personal cell number? Lena Marie Carter, you better start talking right now or I'm drinking all this wine myself. Lena sank onto her futon/couch and buried her face in her hands. I went to the wrong penthouse last night. What? I got off on the wrong floor. His door was open. I walked in thinking it was your party and broke a champagne glass on his marble floor and nearly broke myself falling over, and he caught me and we... She stopped. You what? Maya's voice had gone dangerously quiet. Lena, what did you do? We kissed. Maya dropped the wine bottle. It didn't break, because Maya had expensive taste and bought wine with screw caps like a civilized person, but it rolled across the floor with a hollow sound that perfectly captured how Lena felt inside. You kissed Daniel Hayes. I didn't mean to. It just happened. And then his kid called for him, and I ran out of there like my ass was on fire, and I thought that was the end of it. But then this morning he sent me an email and asked me to meet him, and... Lena took a breath. He offered me $500,000 to pretend to be his girlfriend for 3 months. Silence. Then, I'm sorry, what? Lena told her everything. The dying grandmother, the contract, the separate bedroom, the staged breakup. By the time she finished, Maya had retrieved the wine, opened it, and poured them both glasses that were less glasses and more mugs. Let me get this straight, Maya said. A billionaire, an actual Forbes list billionaire, wants to pay you $500,000 to play house with him and his adorable orphan child while his grandmother dies peacefully thinking he's found love again. When you say it like that, it sounds even more insane. Lena, babe, light of my life. Are you actually considering saying no to this? Of course I'm considering saying no. This is crazy. This is the kind of thing that ends with me on a true crime podcast. Or, Maya said, this is the kind of thing that ends with you having enough money to actually pursue your art instead of designing corporate logos for companies that make bathroom fixtures. That hit harder than Lena wanted to admit. She'd moved to New York 5 years ago with a portfolio and a dream and a probably naive belief that talent and hard work would be enough. They hadn't been. The art world was crowded and competitive and required connections she didn't have and money she couldn't spare. So she'd taken freelance graphic design work, the kind that paid the bills but slowly killed her soul. What if I mess it up? Lena asked quietly. What if his grandmother sees right through me? What if I get attached to his kid? What if you spend the rest of your life wondering what would have happened if you'd been brave enough to say yes? Lena looked at her best friend. Maya had known her since college, had seen her through bad breakups and worse job interviews, had held her hair back when she got food poisoning from questionable sushi, and held her hand when her mom died 3 years ago. If anyone could give her honest advice, it was Maya. Do you think I should do it? Lena asked. I think you should ask yourself what you're really afraid of. Maya set down her wine glass. Because from where I'm sitting, this isn't about the money or the contract or even the dying grandmother. This is about the fact that you kissed him and felt something, and that scares you more than anything else. That's not... You haven't dated anyone since Marcus. You barely leave your apartment except for work. You're 29 years old, and you're living like you're already decided the best parts of your life are over. Maya, I'm not saying marry the guy. I'm not even saying actually fall for him. I'm saying take the chance. Worst case scenario, you spend 3 months living in a penthouse, make $500,000, and walk away with a great story. Best case scenario. She shrugged. Who knows? Maybe you find out you're capable of more than you think you are. Lena stared at the business card on her coffee table. Daniel's handwriting stared back. I need to sleep on it, she said. You need to call him right now before you talk yourself out of it. Maya. Right now, Lena. Before your brain catches up with your fear and convinces you to stay small. Her hands were shaking when she picked up her phone. They were still shaking when she dialed the number on the card. They were definitely shaking when he answered on the second ring. Lena. Just her name. Just that voice. Just enough to make her remember exactly how his mouth had tasted. I'll do it, she said before she could change her mind. I'll take the contract, but I have conditions. Name them. I need everything in writing. The money, the timeline, the expectations, all of it. And I want a lawyer to look over the contract before I sign anything. Done. I'll have my attorney send over the initial draft tomorrow. Anything else? Your son. Lena swallowed hard. I won't lie to a child. If he asks me direct questions, I'm going to tell him age-appropriate truths. I won't pretend to be something I'm not to a 4-year-old. There was a pause. Then, okay? Okay. You're right. Ethan's been through enough. I won't ask you to lie to him. Daniel's voice softened. Thank you for that. When do we start? My grandmother's birthday party is Saturday. That gives us 5 days to get you ready. I'll have my assistant contact you tomorrow with details. And Lena? Yeah? You won't regret this. He hung up before she could tell him she already did. The contract arrived at 9 a.m. the next morning via courier. An actual courier. Like something from a spy movie who made her sign for a leather portfolio that probably cost more than her rent. Inside was a document that was simultaneously the most detailed and most surreal thing Lena had ever read. Confidential Relationship Agreement. She skimmed through pages of legal jargon until she got to the meat of it. Term: 90 days from date of signing, renewable by mutual agreement. Compensation: $250,000 upon signing, $250,000 upon successful completion of term. Living arrangements. Contractor will reside in employer's primary residence for duration of term. Separate bedroom provided. Shared common spaces. Public appearances. Minimum 4. 4. Public outings per month. Attendance at family functions as requested. Professional demeanor required at all times. Physical intimacy. Limited to public displays appropriate for established couples, hand-holding, brief kissing, embracing. No private intimacy expected or required. Termination. Either party may terminate with 2 weeks' notice. Early termination voids compensation unless termination is due to employer breach of contract. There was more, pages more, about non-disclosure agreements and social media restrictions and what would happen if either of them got photographed doing something inappropriate. But the clause that made Lena's stomach flip was buried on page 7. Child interaction. Contractor acknowledges employer has one minor child and agrees to maintain appropriate boundaries while building natural rapport with said child. Contractor will not present herself as child's parent or make promises regarding long-term presence in child's life. She read that section 3 times, then called the number at the bottom of the first page. A woman answered. Hayes Capital Management, Mr. Hayes' office. Hi, this is Lena Carter. I need to speak with Mr. Hayes about the contract. 1 moment, please. 30 seconds later. Lena, is there a problem? The section about your son, she said. I need you to clarify something. Go ahead. You want me to build rapport with him but maintain boundaries. That's contradictory. Either I'm going to be around your kid enough that he gets used to me, or I'm going to be a stranger who shows up at dinner sometimes. You can't have both. Silence on the other end. Then, you're right. So which is it? I don't know. For the first time since she'd met him, Daniel sounded uncertain. I've never done this before. I've never brought anyone into Ethan's life. Not since Sarah died. I don't know what the right answer is. Lena sat down on her futon. Tell me about him. What? Your son. Tell me about him. What's he like? Another pause. He likes airplanes and dinosaurs. He can name every species in the Natural History Museum's dinosaur exhibit. His favorite food is macaroni and cheese, but only the kind from the blue box. He won't touch the fancy stuff. He's starting to read. He asks about his mother sometimes, and I never know what to say. Something in Lena's chest cracked open. He sounds wonderful. He is. Daniel's voice was rough. He's the best thing I've ever done, and I'm terrified of screwing him up. Then here's what we do, Lena said. I'll be honest with him. Age-appropriate, honest. I won't pretend to be his mom or promise I'll be around forever, but I won't treat him like a prop in our fake relationship either. If we're doing this, we do it in a way that doesn't hurt him when it ends. How do we do that? I don't know yet, but we figure it out as we go. She could hear him breathing on the other end of the line, then, I'll have the contract revised. Anything else? Yeah, what should I wear to your grandmother's birthday party? Something nice. My assistant will take you shopping tomorrow. Your assistant, her name is Patricia. She's been with me for 6 years, she's frighteningly efficient, and she knows exactly what you'll need for Saturday. Trust her. Daniel and Lena, thank you for agreeing to this, for thinking about Ethan, for... He stopped. Just thank you. He hung up before she could respond. Lena looked around her tiny apartment, at the water stains and the futon and the art supplies scattered across every available surface. In 5 days, she'd be living in a penthouse. In 6 days, she'd be lying to a dying woman. In 90 days, she'd walk away from all of this with enough money to build a different life. All she had to do was not fall for the billionaire with sad eyes and a son who liked dinosaurs. How hard could that be? Patricia turned out to be a woman in her mid-50s with steel gray hair, immaculate posture, and the kind of polite ruthlessness that made Lena understand exactly how she'd survived 6 years working for Daniel Hayes. Ms. Carter, she said when they met outside Bergdorf Goodman the next morning, Mr. Hayes has provided me with your measurements and a budget. We have 4 hours. Let's not waste them. Lena had never been inside Bergdorf Goodman. She'd walked past it plenty of times, pressed her face against the windows like a kid outside a candy store, but actually going inside had always felt like trespassing. Now Patricia was guiding her through the doors like she owned the place, and a saleswoman was appearing with champagne Lena didn't ask for. I don't need champagne at 10 in the morning, Lena said. You will, Patricia replied. Trust me. She was right. 2 hours later, after trying on what felt like 17 different dresses for the birthday party alone, Lena accepted a second glass gratefully. "The green," Patricia said, studying Lena with the intensity of a general planning an invasion. "Definitely the green. It brings out your eyes, and Mrs. Hayes will appreciate that you didn't try too hard." Mrs. Hayes is Daniel's grandmother? Eleanor Hayes, 92 years old, sharp as a tack, and she can smell insincerity from 3 blocks away. Patricia handed Lena another dress to try. "She raised Daniel after his parents died in a sailing accident when he was 16. She's the reason he is who he is." Lena stepped into the dressing room with the green dress, a silk wrap dress that probably cost more than her last 3 paychecks combined, and tried not to think about how many ways this could go wrong. "How much does she know?" Lena called through the curtain. "About me, I mean. Mr. Hayes told her he met someone unexpected, someone who makes him smile again." Patricia's voice was neutral, but there was something underneath it. "That's all she needs to know." Lena looked at herself in the mirror. The dress fit perfectly, of course it did, because Patricia was frighteningly efficient, and made her look like someone who belonged in Daniel's world. Someone polished, someone appropriate, someone she wasn't. "What if she doesn't like me?" Lena asked quietly. There was a pause. Then Patricia said, "She will. You're nothing like the women who usually circle Daniel. That's exactly why he chose you." That didn't make Lena feel better, but she didn't have time to dwell on it because Patricia was already moving on to shoes and jewelry and a handbag that cost more than Lena's monthly rent, and made her wonder if rich people actually use these things, or just displayed them like art. By the time they finished, Lena had an entirely new wardrobe hanging in garment bags, cocktail dresses and casual wear, and something Patricia called appropriate brunch attire, which apparently was its own category. There were shoes in boxes and jewelry in velvet cases, and a suitcase already packed with everything she'd need to move into Daniel's penthouse. "When do I—" Lena started. "Tomorrow," Patricia said. "Mr. Hayes will send a car at noon. The movers will handle your belongings." "Movers? I live in a studio apartment. I can pack my own stuff." Patricia gave her a look that suggested this was adorable but irrelevant. "The movers will be there at 10. Please have your personal items separated from anything you want put in storage. Mr. Hayes has arranged a storage unit for the duration of your contract." Right. The contract. Because this was a job, not a relationship, and she'd better not forget it. Lena signed the credit card receipt, or rather, watched Patricia sign it, since apparently Daniel had provided a card in Lena's name with a limit she was afraid to know, and walked out of Bergdorf Goodman feeling like she'd stepped into someone else's life. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Patricia says the shopping went well. Thank you for cooperating with her. She can be intense." Lena smiled despite herself and typed back, "Is that your way of saying she's terrifying?" 3 dots appeared, then, "She prefers efficient. She made me try on 17 dresses. Only 17? You got off easy." Lena was still smiling when Maya called, shouting so loud she had to hold the phone away from her ear. "You signed it? You actually signed it? Oh my God, Lena, I just got your text. I can't believe you actually did it." "I'm having second thoughts." "Too late? No backsies on $500,000 contracts." Maya was practically vibrating with excitement. "When do you move in?" "Tomorrow." "Tomorrow? Jesus, he doesn't waste time, does he?" "His grandmother's birthday is Saturday. He wants me settled in before then." "Settled in," Maya repeated. "You're moving in with a billionaire. You're going to live in that penthouse. The one with the view and the marble floors and— Wait, does he have a home gym? Rich people always have home gyms." "I don't know. I didn't exactly get a tour when I was there." "Because you were too busy breaking his champagne glasses and his 4-year dry spell." "Maya, I'm just saying, the man hasn't kissed anyone in 4 years and then you fall into his apartment and suddenly he's offering you a contract? That's not a coincidence." "It's business," Lena said, but the words felt hollow even as she said them. "He needs someone his grandmother will believe. That's all." "Right, sure. That's definitely all it is." Maya's voice turned serious. "Lena, I'm happy for you. I really am. Just promise me you'll be careful. Not with the money or the contract. I know you'll handle that fine. But with your heart. Don't fall for him." "I won't." "Promise me." "I promise," Lena said, and hoped it was a promise she could keep. The movers arrived at precisely 10 a.m. the next morning, as threatened. There were 3 of them, all wearing matching uniforms, all treating Lena's secondhand furniture like it might break if they looked at it wrong. "We're not taking the furniture, ma'am," the lead mover said, "just personal items. Mr. Hayes specified that the apartment should remain furnished for your return, for her return. Because this was temporary. 90 days, she'd be back here before she knew it, back to the water stains and the thin walls and the life she'd built from nothing. Except she'd have $500,000, and that changed everything. Lena packed her clothes, her art supplies, her mother's jewelry box, and the photo albums she couldn't bring herself to throw away. Everything else, the cheap dishes, the furniture from IKEA, the curtains she'd sewn herself, stayed behind. At 11:47, her phone buzzed. Car is downstairs. Lena looked around her empty apartment one last time, grabbed her purse, and left without looking back. The car was a black SUV with tinted windows and a driver who introduced himself as James and didn't seem at all fazed by the fact that he was picking up a woman with a duffel bag and a cardboard box full of art supplies. "Mr. Hayes is waiting for you," James said as they pulled into Manhattan traffic. "He wanted to be there when you arrived." That made Lena's stomach flip in a way that was absolutely not appropriate for a business arrangement. The penthouse looked different in daylight, bigger somehow. The floor-to-ceiling windows let in so much light that the whole space seemed to glow. The broken glass was gone, of course, replaced by an ugly concrete planter that Daniel had apparently decided to use as evidence of their meet-cute story. Daniel was standing in the living room when James brought up her bags, wearing jeans and a gray sweater that made his eyes look even more intense than usual. He looked younger without the suit, more approachable, and that was dangerous. "Lena," he said, "welcome." "Thank you for having me," she replied automatically, then felt ridiculous. This wasn't a dinner party. This was a business transaction. "Let me show you your room." He led her down a hallway lined with abstract art that was probably worth more than her life. The bedroom he opened was bigger than her entire studio apartment had been. Floor-to-ceiling windows on 2 walls, a king-sized bed with white linens, a sitting area with a couch and a reading lamp, an attached bathroom that looked like something from a spa. "This is too much," Lena said faintly. "It's what was available." Daniel set her duffel bag on the bed. "The closet is walk-in. Patricia had your new clothes delivered this morning. They should already be unpacked. If you need anything else, just let me know." "Where's your room?" "Other end of the hall," he pointed. "Ethan's room is between us. He's at preschool right now, but he'll be home around 3. I thought maybe you could meet him before the party tomorrow. Keep it casual." "Okay." Lena's hands were shaking slightly. She shoved them in her pockets. "What should I call you? In front of people, I mean." Daniel considered this. "What do you want to call me?" "I don't know. What do fake girlfriends usually call their fake boyfriends?" A smile ghosted across his mouth. "I don't think there's a standard protocol for this situation." "Daniel, then, unless you prefer something else." "Daniel's fine." He moved toward the door, then stopped. "Lena, I know this is strange. I know you're probably second-guessing everything right now, but I meant what I said in that coffee shop. You won't regret this." "You can't know that?" "No," he admitted, "but I'm going to do everything I can to make sure it's true." He left before she could respond, closing the door softly behind him. Lena sat down on the bed, the incredibly soft, probably $1,000 sheets bed, and tried to remember how to breathe. She spent the next 4 hours unpacking, exploring the penthouse when she was sure Daniel was locked in his office on a conference call, and trying not to feel like an imposter in someone else's life. The penthouse had 3 bedrooms, an office, a kitchen that looked like it belonged in a cooking show, and a living room with that view of Manhattan that had taken her breath away the first night. There was art on every wall, real art, not prints, and furniture that was simultaneously beautiful and comfortable. Nothing matched the cold, sterile aesthetic she'd expected from a billionaire's home. This place felt lived in, warm even. At 2:47, the front door opened. "Daddy, I made a dinosaur!" Lena froze in the kitchen, where she'd been debating whether it was acceptable to make herself coffee or if that was overstepping some invisible boundary. "That's a great dinosaur, buddy," Daniel's voice came from the entryway. "Is it a T-Rex?" "No, it's a velociraptor. Miss Jenny said velociraptors were actually really small, not like in the movies." "Miss Jenny is very smart." Small footsteps running, then silence, then, "Daddy, whose shoes are those?" Lena looked down at her sneakers sitting by the door where she'd left them. "Those belong to someone I want you to meet," Daniel said. "Come on." They appeared in the kitchen doorway. Daniel and a small boy with dark hair that stuck up in about 17 different directions and those same gray eyes that seemed to run in the Hayes family. He was wearing a dinosaur t-shirt and jeans with grass stains on the knees, and he was staring at Lena with open curiosity. "Ethan," Daniel said gently, "this is Lena. She's going to be staying with us for a while." "Hi, Ethan," Lena said, crouching down to his level. "Your dad told me you know a lot about dinosaurs." "I know everything about dinosaurs," Ethan said, with the absolute confidence of a 4-year-old. "What's your favorite?" Lena's mind went blank. "The one with the long neck?" "That's a brachiosaurus. They were one of the tallest dinosaurs ever." Ethan stepped closer, warming up to his subject. "They could eat from really tall trees that other dinosaurs couldn't reach, and they had really long tails to help them balance." "That's so cool," Lena said, and meant it. "What's your favorite?" "Spinosaurus. It had a big sail on its back and it could swim. Most people think T-Rex is the best, but they're wrong." "Ethan," Daniel said mildly, "we don't tell people they're wrong." "But they are wrong. Spinosaurus is way cooler." Lena bit back a smile. "I believe you. Spinosaurus sounds awesome." Ethan studied her for a moment, then nodded like she'd passed some kind of test. "Do you want to see my dinosaur collection?" "I would love to see your dinosaur collection." "Awesome, come on!" He grabbed her hand without hesitation and started tugging her toward the hallway. "I have 47 dinosaurs. Well, 46 real dinosaurs and 1 dragon, but Daddy says we can pretend dragons are dinosaurs if we want to." Lena looked back at Daniel, who was watching them with an expression she couldn't quite read. He mouthed, "Thank you." And something in her chest went warm. Ethan's room was exactly what she would have expected for a 4-year-old boy. Posters of dinosaurs on the walls, toys scattered across every surface, and a bookshelf overflowing with picture books. He showed her his collection with the intensity of a museum curator, explaining the different species and which ones could fly and which ones had feathers and which ones were herbivores versus carnivores. "This one is my favorite," he said, holding up a plastic Spinosaurus that had clearly been loved to the point of having most of its paint rubbed off. "Mommy gave it to me." Lena's breath caught. "Did she?" "Yeah, before she went to heaven." Ethan said it matter-of-factly, the way kids did when they'd been told something enough times that it became just another fact about the world. "Daddy says she loved dinosaurs too, but not as much as she loved me." "I bet she loved you very, very much," Lena said softly. "Do you have a mommy?" "I did. She went to heaven too a few years ago." Ethan looked up at her with those 2 old eyes. "Does it make you sad?" "Sometimes," Lena admitted, "but it also makes me happy to remember her." "Is it like that for you?" He thought about this, turning the Spinosaurus over in his small hands. "I don't really remember her, just in pictures, but Daddy says that's okay, because she's still part of me." "Your dad is right. Are you going to be my new mommy?" The question hit like a punch to the gut. Lena opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. "No," she said finally, gently. "I'm your dad's friend. I'm going to be staying here for a little while, and I hope we can be friends too. But I'm not your mom." "Okay." Ethan seemed to accept this easily. "Can friends play dinosaurs?" "Absolutely." They played for another hour, with Ethan narrating elaborate battles between herbivores and carnivores, while Lena did her best to follow the complex rules he was making up as they went along. At some point, Daniel appeared in the doorway with juice boxes and apple slices, and Lena looked up to find him watching them with that same unreadable expression. "Lena's really good at dinosaur voices," Ethan announced. "She does a better T-Rex than you, Daddy." "Is that so?" Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Way better," Lena confirmed solemnly. "Sorry. I see how it is. I've been replaced already." "You can be the Brachiosaurus," Ethan said generously. "They're really tall like you." They ended up playing together, all 3 of them, until it was time for Ethan's bath. Daniel carried him off with promises of extra bubbles if he didn't splash too much, and Lena sat alone in the dinosaur-covered room, trying to reconcile the controlled billionaire from the coffee shop with the man who did silly voices for plastic toys and knew exactly how his son liked his apple slices cut. This was going to be harder than she thought. That night, after Ethan was asleep, Daniel found her standing by the living room windows, looking out at the city. "Thank you," he said, "for this afternoon. You were good with him." "He's a great kid." "He is." Daniel moved to stand beside her, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. "I was worried about how he'd react to having someone new in the house. He doesn't usually warm up to people that quickly." "I think it's the dinosaur voices." "I have a gift." He smiled, a real smile, not the careful one he used in public. Apparently, they stood in silence for a moment, watching the lights of the city below. Then Lena said, "He asked if I was going to be his new mom." Daniel's jaw tightened. "What did you tell him?" "The truth, that I'm your friend, that I'm staying for a while, that I'm not his mother." She looked at him. "Was that okay?" It was perfect. Daniel ran a hand through his hair. "I should have prepared him better. I should have thought about what questions he might ask. He's 4. You can't prepare for all the questions a 4-year-old will ask." "I can try." There was something raw in his voice, something that made Lena turn to face him fully. "Daniel, you're a good father. You know that, right?" "I'm trying to be. Most days I feel like I'm just winging it and hoping I don't screw him up too badly." "That's what being a parent is." My mom told me that once. She said the moment you stop worrying about whether you're doing it right is the moment you should actually start worrying. Daniel looked at her for a long moment. "Your mother sounds like she was wise." "She was." Lena's throat tightened. "She would have liked you, I think. She always said the measure of a man was how he treated people who couldn't do anything for him. The way you are with Ethan, that's who you really are. You barely know me." "I know enough." The air between them felt charged suddenly, electric in a way that reminded her of that first night. Daniel took a half step closer, and Lena's breath caught. "We should go over the details for tomorrow," he said, but he didn't move back. "The party starts at noon. My grandmother likes to do early lunches. There'll be about 40 people there. Family, close friends, some of her favorite people from the senior center she volunteers at." "She volunteers at 92? 3 days a week, she teaches watercolor painting." Daniel's expression softened. "She says staying busy keeps her young. The doctors told her to slow down after the diagnosis, and she told them that she'd slow down when she was dead." "I like her already." "She'll like you too." He was close enough now that Lena could see the gold flecks in his gray eyes. "Just be yourself. That's all you need to do." "What if myself isn't enough?" "It will be." His hand came up to her face, his thumb brushing along her cheekbone the same way it had that first night. "Trust me." Lena's heart was hammering. "Daniel, I know, contract, boundaries, separate bedrooms." But he didn't move his hand. "Just let me have this one moment, okay? Before tomorrow, before it all becomes performance." She should have stepped back, should have reminded him that this was business, should have done anything except lean into his touch and let her eyes fall closed. "One moment," she whispered. He kissed her softly, carefully, like she was something precious that might break. Nothing like that first desperate kiss in his entryway. This was different, slower, deeper, full of something that felt dangerously like promise. When they pulled apart, Lena was shaking. "That can't happen again," she said. "I know. I'm serious. This is a contract. We have rules." "You're right." But Daniel's hand was still on her face, his thumb still tracing patterns on her cheek. "Tomorrow we start the performance. Tonight. Tonight, we're just 2 people who met at the wrong party and can't stop thinking about each other." "That's not what this is." "Isn't it?" Lena stepped back, breaking the contact, putting distance between them before she did something stupid like kiss him again. "Good night, Daniel." "Good night, Lena." She made it to her bedroom before her knees gave out. She sat on the edge of that expensive bed and touched her mouth and tried to remember all the reasons falling for Daniel Hayes was a terrible idea. She couldn't think of a single one that mattered. The next morning, Patricia arrived at 10 a.m. with a makeup artist and a hairstylist, both of whom descended on Lena like a tactical team preparing for a critical mission. "Natural," Patricia instructed. "Mrs. Hayes doesn't like anything too done. We want Lena to look like herself. Just polished." "I am right here," Lena said. "Yes, and you're going to sit still and let the professionals work." Patricia checked her phone. Mr. Hayes wants to leave at 11:30. That gives us 90 minutes. The makeup artist was a woman named Claudia, who made Lena's skin look like it glowed from within using products that probably cost more than Lena's grocery budget. The hairstylist, Marcus, did something magical that made her hair fall in soft waves instead of the frizzy mess it usually became. "You look beautiful," Patricia said when they finished. "The green dress?" "The green dress." 20 minutes later, Lena stood in front of the full-length mirror in her bedroom and barely recognized herself. The dress fit perfectly, skimming her curves without being too revealing. The makeup made her eyes look bigger, her cheekbones sharper. Her hair fell over her shoulders in a way that looked effortless but had taken Marcus 45 minutes to achieve. She looked like someone who belonged in Daniel's world. She looked like a liar. "Lena?" Daniel's voice came through the door. "Are you ready?" She opened it to find him standing in the hallway wearing a charcoal suit that made him look like he'd stepped off the cover of a magazine. His eyes widened when he saw her. "Is it okay?" Lena asked. Patricia said, "You're perfect," Daniel said, and the way he was looking at her made her feel like maybe that was true. Ethan appeared behind him, dressed in a tiny suit that made him look adorable and slightly uncomfortable. "Lena, you look like a princess." "Thank you, Ethan. You look very handsome." "Daddy made me wear a tie. I don't like ties." "Nobody likes ties," Lena said seriously, "but sometimes we wear them anyway because they make Grandma Eleanor happy." "Did Daddy tell you that?" "Lucky guess." The car ride to Eleanor Hayes's house took 40 minutes, heading north into Westchester. Ethan chattered the whole way about his grandmother's cats. Apparently she had 3. And the cake she always made for her birthday, which was chocolate with raspberry filling. "Grandma Eleanor makes the best cake," Ethan informed Lena. "Way better than store cake. She let me help last year and I got to crack the eggs." "Did you get any shells in the batter?" "Only a little bit." He grinned. "Grandma said it adds texture." Daniel met Lena's eyes in the rearview mirror and something passed between them. Something warm and conspiratorial and dangerous. Eleanor Hayes's house was a sprawling colonial with a massive oak tree in the front yard and gardens that probably looked incredible in summer but were now preparing for winter. Cars lined the driveway, expensive cars, the kind that had Lena's imposter syndrome kicking into high gear. "Remember," Daniel said quietly as James parked, "just be yourself." "What if myself throws up on your grandmother?" "Then we'll deal with it." He squeezed her hand. "You've got this." Inside, the house was warm and crowded with people. A woman in her 60s intercepted them immediately, Daniel's cousin Sarah, who looked Lena up and down with barely concealed assessment. A man in his 40s clapped Daniel on the shoulder and made a joke about finally settling down. Someone's child ran past chasing one of the cats Ethan had mentioned. And then, through the crowd, Lena saw her. Eleanor Hayes was tiny, maybe 5'2", with white hair pinned in a neat bun and eyes that were still sharp despite her 92 years. She wore a lavender dress and pearls, and she was watching Daniel with an expression of such pure love that Lena felt like she was intruding on something private. "Daniel," Eleanor said, her voice surprisingly strong. "You made it." "Happy birthday, Grandma." Daniel bent down to kiss her cheek. "I brought someone I want you to meet." Eleanor's gaze shifted to Lena, and Lena felt like she was being x-rayed. Those sharp eyes took in everything, the dress, the makeup, the way Lena's hand was shaking slightly where Daniel held it. "So you're the girl my grandson can't stop talking about," Eleanor said. Lena's throat went dry. Yes. I'm Lena. It's wonderful to meet you, Mrs. Hayes." "Call me Eleanor. Mrs. Hayes makes me feel old." She smiled, a real smile that transformed her whole face. "Come here, child. Let me look at you properly." Lena stepped forward, acutely aware of 40 pairs of eyes watching this interaction. Eleanor took both of Lena's hands in her own. Her skin was soft, paper-thin, warm. "You're nervous." "Terrified," Lena admitted before she could stop herself. "Good. That means you care what I think." Eleanor squeezed her hands. "Daniel tells me you're an artist." "Graphic designer, mostly. I do some painting when I have time." "What do you paint?" "Lately, nothing. I've been too busy with client work. But when I did have time, I liked painting cityscapes, the way light hits buildings at different times of day. I'd like to see your work sometime." Eleanor released her hands but kept studying her face. "You have kind eyes. And you don't look at my grandson like he's a bank account with nice hair. Grandma, Daniel said, sounding pained. What? It's true. The last girl you brought to meet me. What was her name? Jessica? Jennifer? She spent the whole dinner talking about her friend's yacht. Eleanor turned back to Lena. Do you have friends with yachts? I have a friend with a car that breaks down twice a month. Does that count? Eleanor laughed, a genuine, delighted sound. I like her, Daniel. Don't screw this up. I'll do my best, Daniel said dryly. The party swallowed them after that. Lena met aunts and uncles and cousins and family friends, all of whom seemed cautiously pleased that Daniel had brought someone. She fielded questions about how they met with the story they'd rehearsed. Wrong party, right floor, kismet, and tried not to feel guilty when people smiled knowingly. She watched Daniel with his family and saw sides of him she hadn't known existed. The way he teased his cousin about her new haircut. The patience with which he explained his work to Eleanor's friend from the senior center. The ease with which he scooped up Ethan when the boy got tired and let him fall asleep on his shoulder. This was Daniel without the armor, without the careful control. Just a man who loved his family and was trying his best. And Lena was falling for him. She realized it somewhere between the cake cutting and the moment when Eleanor pulled her aside to show her the watercolor studio in the converted sunroom. They stood together looking at Eleanor's paintings, delicate florals and landscapes that showed real skill, and Eleanor said quietly, "He hasn't brought anyone to meet me since Sarah died. Not once in 4 years." "I know," Lena said. "Do you love him?" The question was so direct it stole Lena's breath. She opened her mouth to lie, to say something appropriate and non-committal, but Eleanor's sharp eyes were on her, and suddenly she couldn't do it. "I'm starting to," Lena said. "And that wasn't part of the plan." Eleanor smiled. "It never is, dear. Love is what happens when you're busy making other plans." She patted Lena's hand. "Don't fight it. Life's too short, and at my age I can tell you with absolute certainty that the only things you regret are the chances you didn't take." Lena wanted to tell her the truth, wanted to confess that this was all fake, all performance, all a carefully constructed lie to give Eleanor peace. But before she could form the words, Daniel appeared in the doorway. "Grandma, people are asking for you," he said. "Something about opening presents." "Let them wait. I'm talking to Lena." "I can see that. What are you telling her?" "None of your business." Eleanor winked at Lena. "Come on. Let's go watch me pretend to be surprised by another set of bath towels." The party wound down around 4 p.m. Lena helped Daniel load a sleeping Ethan into the car, while Patricia coordinated the gift boxes, and Eleanor hugged everyone goodbye with the fierce energy of someone who knew each hug might be the last. "Take care of my boy," Eleanor whispered when she hugged Lena. "Both of them." "I will," Lena promised, and meant it more than she should have. The drive home was quiet. Ethan stayed asleep in his car seat, and Daniel stared out the window at the passing scenery. "That went well," he said finally. "Yeah." Lena's hands were twisted together in her lap. "Your grandmother is amazing." "She liked you." "I liked her too." Silence stretched between them, heavy with things they couldn't say. "Daniel?" "Lena." They both spoke at once, then stopped. Lena laughed awkwardly. "You first," Daniel said. "I was just going to say that I understand now. Why you're doing this. She deserves to be happy, to think you're settled. I get it." Daniel nodded slowly. "And I was going to say that I'm sorry." "For what?" "For dragging you into this. For asking you to lie to someone like her. She's the most honest person I know, and here I am feeding her a story that—" He stopped. "It's not fair to her, or to you. You're giving her what she needs most. Peace. The chance to let go knowing you'll be okay." Lena reached over and took his hand without thinking. "That's not nothing." His fingers tightened around hers. "When did this get so complicated?" "Probably around the time I fell into your apartment and kissed you." "Best accident I ever had," Daniel said quietly. They held hands the rest of the way home, and Lena tried not to think about how natural it felt or how much she was going to miss it when their 90 days were up. 3 weeks into the arrangement, Lena woke up to find Ethan standing beside her bed, clutching his battered Spinosaurus and looking miserable. "Lena?" His voice was small. "My tummy hurts." She was out of bed in seconds, pressing the back of her hand to his forehead. He was burning up. Okay, buddy, let's get you to your dad. She scooped him up. He was lighter than she expected, and carried him down the hall to Daniel's room, knocking once before pushing the door open. Daniel was already awake, sitting up in bed with his laptop, glasses perched on his nose. He looked younger with the glasses, more vulnerable, and Lena filed that observation away for later. "Ethan's sick," she said. The laptop was closed and abandoned in seconds. Daniel was across the room, taking Ethan from her arms, his hand going to the same spot on the boy's forehead. "How long has he been warm?" "I don't know. He just came to my room." "Ethan, does anything else hurt?" Daniel's voice was calm, but Lena could see the tension in his shoulders. "Your throat? Your ears?" "Just my tummy, and I'm cold." "Let's take your temperature." Daniel carried him toward the bathroom, then paused. "Lena, could you grab the thermometer from the medicine cabinet and the children's Tylenol?" She found both, plus a glass of water, and brought them to Ethan's room where Daniel had settled the boy in bed. The thermometer read 102.3. "Nothing immediately alarming," Daniel said, more to himself than to her, "but we should keep an eye on it." "I can stay with him," Lena offered. "If you have work." "No." The word came out sharper than Daniel probably intended. He softened his voice. "I mean, thank you, but I've got this. You should go back to sleep." Lena looked at Ethan, who was watching them both with fevered eyes, then back at Daniel. "I'm not going to be able to sleep knowing he's sick. Let me help." They ended up in a weird tag team. Daniel on one side of Ethan's bed, Lena on the other, taking turns reading dinosaur books and bringing water and checking his temperature every hour. By dawn, the fever had broken slightly, and Ethan had fallen into an exhausted sleep. "You didn't have to stay," Daniel said quietly. They were both still sitting on the floor, backs against Ethan's bed, surrounded by discarded books. "I know. This isn't part of the contract." "I know that too." Lena looked at him. "He's a kid. He was sick. I wasn't going to just go back to sleep and pretend I didn't know." Daniel studied her face like he was trying to solve a complex equation. "You're not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "Someone who would keep more distance. Someone who would remember this is temporary." The words stung, even though they were true. "Do you want me to keep more distance?" "I don't know what I want anymore," Daniel admitted. He ran a hand through his hair, making it stand up in a way that would have been funny if the moment wasn't so heavy. "A month ago, I had everything figured out. I knew exactly what this was supposed to be. And now? He looked at her, and the expression in his eyes made her breath catch. "Now I keep forgetting it's fake." Lena's heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. "Daniel, I know. Boundaries, rules. This is business." But he didn't look away. "Except when you play dinosaurs with my son, it doesn't feel like business. When you laugh at my grandmother's terrible jokes, it doesn't feel like performance. When you stayed up all night helping with a sick kid who isn't yours, that wasn't in the contract." "What do you want me to say?" "I want you to tell me I'm not the only one who's struggling with this." Lena closed her eyes. She could lie. Should lie. Should remind him that she was here for the money, for the chance to build a different life, for anything except the way her chest ached when she watched him with Ethan, or the way her skin remembered his touch. "You're not," she whispered. "You're not the only one." When she opened her eyes, he was closer. Close enough that she could count the gray flecks in his irises, close enough that she could see the exhaustion and confusion and want written across his face. "This is a bad idea," he said. "The worst. We should stick to the contract. We absolutely should." Neither of them moved. Then Ethan stirred in his sleep above them, mumbling something about velociraptors, and the spell broke. Daniel pulled back first, standing and offering Lena his hand. "I should let you get some rest," he said. "Thank you. For tonight." Lena took his hand, let him pull her to her feet. "Daniel, don't." His voice was rough. "Don't say whatever you're about to say. Not yet. I'm not ready to hear it." He left before she could respond, and Lena stood alone in Ethan's dinosaur-covered room, her hand still warm from his touch, her heart hammering against her ribs. This was supposed to be simple. 3 months. $500,000. A clean exit. Nothing about this was simple anymore. The next 2 weeks passed in a strange blur. Ethan recovered from his stomach bug and immediately caught a cold that he generously shared with both Daniel and Lena. They spent a week passing tissues and cough drops back and forth, taking turns being the functional adult while the others felt miserable. "This is not how I imagined my glamorous billionaire experience," Lena croaked one afternoon, lying on the couch with a box of tissues balanced on her chest while some animated movie about talking cars played on the TV. Daniel, who was in the kitchen making soup because apparently billionaires could actually cook, laughed. "What did you imagine?" "I don't know. Charity galas, opera, people drinking champagne and discussing the stock market. We have a gala next weekend, actually." He appeared with 2 bowls of soup, handing her one. Patricia put it on the calendar. Of course she did. Lena sat up, nearly dropping the tissue box. "What kind of gala?" "Fundraiser for the Children's Hospital, black tie, about 300 people, several of whom will definitely want to discuss the stock market." "I don't know anything about the stock market. Neither do half the people who'll be there. They just pretend really well." Daniel settled onto the other end of the couch, careful to maintain distance. They'd been doing that since the night with Ethan, maintaining careful distance, avoiding being alone together, pretending that nothing had shifted. It was exhausting. "Will your grandmother be there?" Lena asked. Something flickered across Daniel's face. "No, she's not feeling up to evening events anymore. The treatment—" He stopped, took a breath. "It's not working as well as they'd hoped." "Daniel, I'm so sorry." "She's got maybe 3 months left, 4 if we're lucky." His voice was flat, factual, but Lena could see the pain underneath. "She wants to spend another weekend at the family house in Montauk before it gets too cold. I thought maybe we could take her next weekend after the gala." "Of course, whatever you need." "It would just be us. Well, us and Ethan and probably my cousin Marcus, because someone needs to help me keep the house from falling apart. But it would be close quarters. A lot of togetherness." "I can handle togetherness." "Can you?" Daniel met her eyes. "Because I'm not sure I can." The honesty in his voice made her chest tight. "We'll figure it out. We have to." "Why?" "Because your grandmother deserves this. Because Ethan deserves to have these memories with her. Because—" She stopped, swallowed hard. "Because I care about both of them too much to let my inconvenient feelings screw this up." "Inconvenient feelings," Daniel repeated slowly. "Is that what we're calling this?" "What else would you call it?" He set down his soup bowl, turned to face her fully. "I'd call it the best thing that's happened to me in 4 years, and the worst possible timing. I'd call it waking up every morning and forgetting for about 30 seconds that you're only here because I'm paying you. I'd call it watching you with my son and wanting things I have no right to want." Lena's breath caught. "Daniel." "I know. Contract, 90 days. This is business." He stood abruptly. "I'm going to check on Ethan." He left, and Lena sat alone with her soup getting cold, and her heart doing things it definitely shouldn't be doing. The gala was exactly as overwhelming as Lena had feared. Patricia had procured a dress, midnight blue, backless, with a slit up the thigh that made Lena feel both powerful and exposed. And the same makeup artist from Eleanor's party had transformed her into someone who looked like they belonged in a ballroom at the Plaza Hotel. Daniel met her at the bottom of the stairs wearing a tuxedo that should have been illegal. His eyes widened when he saw her. "You look—" He stopped, swallowed. "Beautiful. You look beautiful. You clean up pretty well yourself." "Daddy, you look like James Bond," Ethan called from the couch where he was set up with a babysitter for the evening. "Who told you about James Bond?" Daniel asked. "Uncle Marcus. He said James Bond is cool and has cool cars, and you have a cool car, so you must be like James Bond. Remind me to have words with Marcus." The babysitter, a cheerful college student named Amy, grinned. "We'll be fine, Mr. Hayes. I brought 3 new dinosaur movies." "You're a saint," Daniel told her. In the car, Lena tried not to be too aware of how close Daniel was sitting, how his cologne filled the small space, how the streetlight sliding across his face made him look like something from a dream. "You ready for this?" he asked. "No, but I'll fake it. Story of my life." He smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Just stay close to me. If anyone asks questions you're not comfortable with, squeeze my hand twice and I'll change the subject. What if I need to escape entirely? Then squeeze 3 times and I'll fake a phone emergency." They developed a whole system of signals over the past month. Little touches and glances that looked like natural couple behavior, but actually meant everything from, "I need a drink," to "please get me away from this person." It was frighteningly effective, which probably said something about how well they'd learned to read each other. The gala was a sea of designer gowns and expensive tuxedos. Lena recognized several faces from magazine covers and news articles. Daniel kept his hand on her lower back, steering her through the crowd, introducing her to business partners and old family friends with the ease of someone who'd been doing this his entire life. "Daniel Hayes, I heard rumors you were dating again." A woman in her 50s with perfect hair and a dress that probably cost more than Lena's car appeared beside them. "You must introduce me." "Margaret, this is Lena Carter. Lena, Margaret Chen. She runs the fundraising committee." "It's wonderful to meet you," Lena said, shaking her hand. "How did you two meet? I need all the details." Margaret's eyes were sharp, assessing. Daniel launched into their rehearsed story, wrong party, right moment, completely unexpected. And Lena watched him perform with the skill of someone who'd been managing other people's perceptions for years. His hand stayed warm and steady on her back, grounding her. They made it through cocktail hour, through dinner, through a silent auction where Daniel casually bid $20,000 on a weekend in the Hamptons without blinking. Lena was nursing her second glass of champagne and starting to think they might actually survive the evening when she excused herself to find the restroom. The bathroom was a marble palace with an attendant who handed out towels and breath mints. Lena was washing her hands when she heard two women enter one of the stalls, their voices carrying clearly across the space. "Did you see Daniel Hayes is here with someone?" "I saw. Who is she?" "No idea. Nobody knows her. Margaret said she's some kind of artist or designer. Definitely not from our world." "How long do you think it'll last? 3 months? 6? Please. You know Daniel. He'll get bored once the novelty wears off. Remember that girl he brought to the opera last year? What was her name?" "That was 4 years ago, Janet, before Sarah died." "Oh, right." A pause. "Well, still. This one looks like she's trying too hard. That dress is practically screaming, 'Look at me.'" Lena's face burned. She wanted to say something, wanted to defend herself, wanted to tell them that the dress had been Patricia's choice, and she'd felt uncomfortable in it from the moment she put it on. But her throat was tight and her eyes were stinging, and all she could do was stand there, frozen. The women left without seeing her. The attendant met Lena's eyes in the mirror with an expression of profound sympathy. "They're just jealous, honey," she said quietly. "I've been working these events for 15 years. I can spot the real thing, and what you have with Mr. Hayes. That's real." If only she knew. Lena returned to the ballroom to find Daniel in conversation with a group of men in tuxedos. He saw her approaching, and something in his expression shifted. Concern, maybe, or recognition that something was wrong. "Excuse me, gentlemen," he said smoothly, and met her halfway across the floor. "Are you okay?" "Fine, just needed some air." "You're a terrible liar." His hand found hers, squeezed gently. "What happened?" "Nothing. Just some women in the bathroom talking about how I don't belong here and you'll get bored of me in a few months." She tried to smile. "They're not wrong." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Who was it?" "Doesn't matter. It does to me." "Daniel, they're right. I don't belong in this world. I'm playing dress-up in borrowed clothes at a party where people casually bid the equivalent of my yearly salary on vacation homes." She pulled her hand free. "I need some air, real air." She headed for the terrace before he could stop her. The November night was cold enough to make her skin prickle, but the ballroom had been stifling, and she needed to breathe. The terrace overlooked Central Park, the trees dark against the city lights. Lena wrapped her arms around herself and tried to remember why she'd agreed to this. The money, the opportunity, the chance to build something different. But standing here, pretending to be someone she wasn't, lying to people who were kind to her because they thought she was making Daniel happy, it all felt hollow. Here, Daniel's tuxedo jacket settled around her shoulders, warm and smelling like him. He'd followed her outside, of course he had. "You'll freeze," she said. "I'll survive." He leaned against the railing beside her. "Talk to me." "About what?" "About whatever's going through your head right now, because I can see you spiraling, and I need to know if this is about what those women said or if it's something bigger." Lena pulled his jacket tighter around her shoulders. What are we doing, Daniel? Right now. Standing on a terrace, avoiding a party full of people I don't particularly like. You know what I mean? He was quiet for a long moment. Yeah, I do. This was supposed to be simple. A transaction. You needed someone to play a role. I needed money. But now... She stopped, unsure how to articulate the tangle of feelings in her chest. Now I look at Eleanor and feel guilty every time I smile at you. I play with Ethan and wonder how he's going to feel when I disappear. I watch you bid $20,000 on a weekend trip without thinking about it, and remember that we live in completely different worlds. Is that what you think? That we live in different worlds? Don't we? Daniel turned to face her fully. A month ago, I would have said yes. But Lena, you've been living in my home for a month. You've seen me at 3 a.m. when Ethan has nightmares. You've watched me burn dinner and lose my patience and stress about work emails. You've seen the parts of my life that aren't about money or business or this. He gestured to the ballroom behind them. You've seen me, the real me. How is that a different world? Because in 2 months, I'm going back to my real life. My studio apartment and my freelance clients and my friend who drives a car that breaks down twice a month. This... She touched the fabric of his jacket. This isn't real. It's a beautiful borrowed moment, but it's not mine to keep. What if it could be? The question hung between them, dangerous and tempting. Don't, Lena said. Don't say things like that when you don't mean them. What makes you think I don't mean them? Because people like me don't end up with people like you. Not in real life. This is a contract, Daniel. It has an expiration date. Contracts can be renegotiated. Her heart was hammering. What are you saying? I'm saying that I haven't felt this alive in 4 years. I'm saying that watching you with Ethan makes me want things I thought died with Sarah. I'm saying that every morning I wake up and forget this is supposed to be temporary, and I don't want to remember. Daniel, I know it's too soon. I know we agreed to boundaries, but Lena, I'm falling for you, and I don't know how to stop. The words knocked the air from her lungs. She stared at him. This man who'd built walls around his heart for years, who controlled everything in his life with careful precision, who was looking at her now like she was something precious and terrifying. This is a bad idea, she whispered. Probably the worst I've ever had. We could ruin everything, or we could finally stop pretending. He stepped closer, and Lena's back hit the railing. His hands came up to frame her face, thumbs brushing along her cheekbones. Tell me to stop, he said quietly. Tell me this is just the contract and I'll back off. I'll keep my distance for the next 2 months and we'll part ways exactly like we planned. Just say the word. Lena opened her mouth. The smart thing would be to say yes, to remind him of all the reasons this couldn't work, to protect herself from the inevitable heartbreak. Instead, she grabbed the front of his shirt and pulled him down to kiss her. This kiss was nothing like the careful ones they'd shared for appearances. This was desperate and honest and tasted like champagne and goodbye and hello all at once. Daniel's arms wrapped around her waist, pulling her closer, and Lena melted into him, letting herself have this moment even though her brain was screaming that it was a mistake. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathing hard. We should go back inside, Lena said. We should. Neither of them moved. This doesn't change the contract, she said. We still have rules. Right, rules. And we can't tell Eleanor, not yet. Not until we're sure. Lena. Daniel pressed his forehead to hers. Stop thinking for 1 second and just feel this. She did. She let herself feel the solid warmth of him, the way her heart raced when he touched her, the terrifying exhilaration of falling for someone she'd promised herself she wouldn't fall for. This is going to be complicated, she said. Everything worth having is. They went back inside holding hands, and Lena tried not to notice the curious looks from the women who'd been gossiping in the bathroom. She didn't care anymore. Let them talk. Let them think whatever they wanted. For tonight, this was real. The weekend in Montauk was Eleanor's idea. She'd called Daniel on Tuesday morning and announced that she wanted to see the ocean one more time, and could they please make it happen before Thanksgiving. Of course, Grandma, Daniel had said. I'll arrange everything. Which was how Lena found herself in an SUV heading east on Friday afternoon, Ethan chattering excitedly in the back seat about building sandcastles, even though it was way too cold for that. The house was a sprawling beach property that had been in the Hayes family for 3 generations. Daniel's cousin Marcus met them at the door, tall, charming, with the same gray eyes that seemed to mark everyone in this family. So you're the famous Lena, Marcus said, shaking her hand with a grin. I've heard a lot about you. All terrible things, I'm sure. Mostly that you're the first person to beat Daniel at Dinosaur Voices. That's impressive. Eleanor arrived an hour later in a car service, looking frailer than she had at her birthday party, but with the same sharp eyes and quick smile. Daniel helped her up the front steps with a gentleness that made Lena's chest ache. The ocean, Eleanor said when they got her settled on the porch with a blanket and hot tea. I'd forgotten how much I missed it. They spent the evening cooking dinner together, or rather Marcus and Lena cooked while Daniel supervised Ethan's help, and Eleanor directed operations from her chair like a general commanding troops. It was chaotic and warm and felt nothing like the careful distance Lena had been trying to maintain. After Ethan went to bed, they sat on the porch watching the moon reflected on the water. Marcus had disappeared to take a phone call, leaving Lena and Daniel alone with Eleanor. I want to tell you both something, Eleanor said. Her voice was quieter than usual, tired. The doctors called this week. The treatment isn't working. They're recommending we stop and focus on comfort care. Daniel's hand tightened on the porch railing. Grandma, don't. Don't try to convince me to keep fighting. I'm 92 years old. I've had a good life. I'm ready. She looked at Lena. But I need to know you'll take care of my boys. Both of them. Lena's throat closed. Eleanor, promise me. Daniel tries so hard to be strong for everyone, but he's going to need someone when I'm gone. And Ethan, that sweet boy, deserves to have a mother who loves him. Eleanor reached for Lena's hand. Promise me you'll stay, that you won't run when things get hard. The weight of the lie pressed down on Lena's chest like a physical thing. She wanted to tell Eleanor the truth, wanted to confess that this was all temporary, that she was being paid to be here. But Daniel's eyes were on her, pleading silently, and Eleanor looked so hopeful. I promise, Lena whispered, and hated herself for it. Eleanor smiled. Good. That's settled then. She stood slowly, Daniel jumping up to help her. I'm going to bed. You two should stay up. Enjoy the ocean. Life's too short to waste beautiful nights. After she left, Lena and Daniel sat in silence. The waves crashed against the shore in a rhythm that should have been soothing but just made Lena feel restless. I'm a terrible person, she said finally. You're not? I just lied to a dying woman. You gave her what she needed to hear. Daniel's voice was rough. There's a difference. Is there? Lena stood, wrapping her arms around herself. Daniel, what happens when she's gone and I leave? What happens when Ethan asks where I went? What happens when your family realizes this was all fake? It's not fake. Not anymore. That doesn't change the fact that we started with a lie. Then we tell them the truth. Daniel stood too, moving closer. We tell them it started as an arrangement, but became real. People will understand. Will they? Or will they look at me like I'm some kind of con artist who took advantage of a grieving man? Lena, I need to walk. She headed for the stairs leading down to the beach. I just need some air. The sand was cold under her feet, the wind sharp with salt. Lena walked along the waterline, letting the ocean drown out the noise in her head. She'd known this was a bad idea from the start, had known that fake dating a billionaire would get complicated, that she'd get attached, that lines would blur. But she'd convinced herself she could handle it, could keep her emotions in check, could walk away cleanly when the time came. Now Eleanor was dying and Ethan called her name when he had nightmares, and Daniel looked at her like she was something precious, and Lena didn't know how to untangle the real from the performance anymore. You're going to freeze. She turned to find Daniel walking toward her, carrying a blanket. He draped it around her shoulders without asking permission. I needed to think, she said. You think too much. One of us has to. They stood together watching the waves. After a long moment, Daniel said, When Sarah died, I thought I was done. Done feeling anything, done wanting anything except to make sure Ethan was okay. I built walls so high I couldn't see over them, and I told myself that was strength. Daniel, then you fell into my apartment and knocked over my champagne and everything changed. You made me remember what it felt like to want something for myself, to hope for something more than just getting through each day. That's not fair, Lena said quietly. You can't put that on me. I can't be responsible for fixing you. I'm not asking you to fix me. I'm asking you to let me try this. Really try. Not as part of a contract, not as a performance for my grandmother. Just us, figuring out if this could be something real. And if it doesn't work, if we try and fail and make everything worse, then at least we'll know. At least we won't spend the rest of our lives wondering. Lena turned to face him. I'm scared. Me too. I don't fit in your world, Daniel. Tonight at the gala proved that. I don't know how to navigate charity events and business dinners and people who think I'm not good enough for you. Then we'll figure it out together. Lena, I don't care about any of that. I care about the woman who stayed up all night with my sick kid, who makes my grandmother laugh, who does terrible T-Rex impressions and isn't afraid to call me out when I'm being an idiot. You're rarely an idiot. See? You're already lying to make me feel better. That's love. The word hung between them, terrifying and perfect. Don't, Lena whispered. Don't say that unless you mean it. I mean it. Daniel cupped her face in his hands. I love you. I think I've been falling for you since that first night, and I know it's too fast and too complicated and probably too many other things, but I don't care. I love you. Lena's eyes were burning. This is crazy. Completely insane. We barely know each other. I know everything that matters. She kissed him then, tasting salt spray and truth, letting herself believe for just a moment that this could work, that love could be enough to bridge the gap between their worlds. When they pulled apart, Daniel was smiling. Is that a yes? It's a maybe, a terrified, uncertain maybe. I'll take it. They walked back to the house hand in hand, and Lena tried not to think about how good it felt, or how much it was going to hurt when it ended. The rest of the weekend passed in a blur of stolen moments and careful pretense. They kept up appearances in front of Eleanor and Marcus, but every touch lingered a little longer, every glance held a little more weight. Ethan seemed to sense something had shifted. He started asking when Lena was going to move into the big bedroom with his daddy, which made Marcus laugh and Daniel turn red and Lena want to sink through the floor. Sunday morning, Eleanor asked to walk on the beach. Daniel tried to convince her to stay inside where it was warm, but she waved him off. I'm dying, not dead. Let an old woman see the ocean. They made a strange procession down to the sand, Daniel supporting Eleanor on one side, Lena on the other, with Marcus and Ethan trailing behind collecting shells. The wind was sharp, but Eleanor seemed energized by it, her face turned toward the water. I used to bring Daniel here every summer, she said. After his parents died, this was the place that felt safe. The ocean doesn't care about your problems. It just keeps going. It's beautiful, Lena said. It is. Eleanor squeezed her hand. Thank you, dear, for this weekend, for making my boy smile again, for giving an old woman hope. The guilt was crushing. Eleanor, I know. Eleanor's voice was gentle. You think I don't see what's happening? You think I can't tell that something between you two has shifted? Lena's heart stopped. What do you mean? I mean, I see the way you look at each other, like you're both terrified and thrilled at the same time. Eleanor smiled. That's how I looked at my husband when we first fell in love. Like I'd found something precious and was afraid of breaking it. I don't want to hurt him, Lena said quietly. Then don't. Stay. Fight for this. Love isn't supposed to be easy, but it's always supposed to be worth it. Before Lena could respond, Marcus called out that Ethan had found a huge shell, and the moment passed. But Eleanor's words stayed with her all the way back to the city. Monday morning, Lena woke to her phone exploding with notifications, texts from Maya. Lena, call me right now. This is important. Why aren't you answering? She called back immediately. Maya answered on the first ring. Have you seen the news? What? No, I just woke up. What's going on? Check your phone, check Twitter, check literally anything. Maya's voice was tight. Someone leaked your contract. The room tilted. What? The full contract, the dollar amounts, the 3-month term, everything. It's everywhere. Billionaire Daniel Hayes pays woman $500,000 to fake relationship. The Post ran it as their front page. Lena's hands were shaking so hard she nearly dropped her phone. How? Who? I don't know, but Lena, it's bad. People are calling you a gold digger. They're saying Daniel's a joke for having to pay someone to date him. Someone dug up your old Instagram photos and is comparing them to recent pictures at the gala. It's a whole thing. The bedroom door flew open. Daniel stood there in wrinkled clothes, looking like he hadn't slept. His phone was in his hand, his expression devastated. "Lena," he said, "we need to talk." "Maya, I'll call you back," Lena said, her voice hollow. She ended the call without waiting for a response. Daniel closed the door behind him. In the hallway, she could hear Patricia's clipped voice on the phone, already doing damage control. The normalcy of that sound, Patricia handling a crisis, made everything feel surreal. "How bad is it?" Lena asked. Daniel's laugh was bitter. "Define bad. The tabloids are having a field day. My office has been fielding calls since 5 a.m. Someone sent the contract to every major news outlet in the city." He ran a hand through his hair. "TMZ is calling it the most expensive fake relationship in history." Lena pulled up her phone with shaking hands. The headlines were exactly as brutal as Maya had warned. "Billionaire's bizarre dating contract exposed. $500,000 for 3 months of fake love. Daniel Hayes pays for companionship while grandmother dies." Gold digger or victim? The woman behind Hayes' contract scandal. There were photos of her from the gala, zoomed in to show every imperfection. Side-by-side comparisons of her before Instagram posts, paint-stained jeans and secondhand sweaters, next to the designer gowns Patricia had dressed her in. The comments were vicious. "She's literally a prostitute with a contract. Imagine being so pathetic. You have to pay someone to pretend to love you. That kid is going to need so much therapy." Lena's stomach turned. "They brought Ethan into this." "Of course they did." Daniel's voice was flat. "Everything is fair game when you're rich enough. My son, my dead wife, my dying grandmother. It's all just content for them." "Daniel, I'm so sorry." "Don't." The word came out sharper than he probably intended. "Don't apologize. This isn't your fault." "Then whose fault is it? I signed that contract. I took your money. I lied to your grandmother and your family and everyone who looked at us and thought we were real. We are real. What happened this weekend was real." "Was it?" Lena heard her voice rising but couldn't stop it. "Or was that just another part of the performance? How am I supposed to know the difference anymore?" Daniel flinched like she'd hit him. "You know the difference. You felt it. Don't pretend you didn't." Feeling something doesn't make it real. Feeling something doesn't change the fact that this entire relationship is built on a lie. "It started as a lie," Daniel said, "but it became something else. You know it did." Before Lena could respond, her phone rang. Eleanor's name flashed across the screen. They stared at it in horror. "I can't," Lena whispered. "I can't talk to her. Not after—" "Let me." Daniel took the phone, answered it. "Hi, Grandma." Even from across the room, Lena could hear Eleanor's voice, strong despite the early hour. "Is it true? What they're saying in the papers?" Daniel closed his eyes. "Grandma, just answer the question, Daniel. Did you pay that girl to pretend to date you?" The silence stretched impossibly long. "Yes," Daniel said finally. "But it's not what you think. What I think is that you lied to me. You looked me in the eye and let me believe you'd found something real, something worth holding on to. You let me die thinking you were going to be okay. You're not dying. Don't." Eleanor's voice cracked. "Don't insult me by pretending this changes anything. I asked you for one thing, Daniel, one honest thing before I go, and you couldn't even give me that." "I love her." The words burst out of Daniel like a confession. "The contract was real, but what I feel for her, that's real too. I love her, Grandma. I didn't mean for it to happen, but it did." Lena's breath caught. "Does she love you?" Eleanor asked quietly. Daniel looked at Lena, his expression raw and desperate. "I don't know." "Then you're an even bigger fool than I thought." Eleanor sighed, the sound exhausted. "I need time, Daniel. I need to think. Don't call me. Don't come see me. Not until I'm ready." The line went dead. Daniel stood there holding Lena's phone like it might explode. Then, carefully, he set it down on the dresser. "I should go," he said. "I have meetings, press statements to approve. Patricia needs to coordinate with the legal team about the leak. Someone violated the NDA, and we need to find out who." "Daniel, not now, Lena. I can't—" His voice broke. "I can't do this right now." He left, and Lena sank onto the bed, her whole body shaking. The next 3 days were a nightmare. Lena stayed in her room as much as possible, avoiding the cameras that had appeared outside the building, the reporters who somehow got her cell number and called at all hours. Patricia had arranged security, but they couldn't stop the photos taken with telephoto lenses or the speculation that ran rampant online. Maya came over on day 2, sneaking in through the service entrance with Thai food and wine. "You look like hell," Maya said, which was true. Lena hadn't washed her hair in 3 days and was living in the same sweatpants she'd been wearing since Monday. "Thanks. That's helpful." "I'm not here to be helpful. I'm here to tell you the truth." Maya set down the food and grabbed Lena's shoulders. "This is bad, but it's not the end of the world. In 2 weeks, some celebrity will do something stupid and everyone will forget about you. Eleanor won't forget. Daniel's family won't forget." Lena's voice cracked. "I broke a dying woman's heart, Maya. I made her think her grandson had found happiness, and it was all a lie." "Was it all a lie? Does it matter?" "Of course it matters." Maya shook her gently. "Lena, I've known you for 8 years. I've seen you date. I've seen you get your heart broken and put it back together. And I have never, not once, seen you look at anyone the way you look at Daniel Hayes. That doesn't change anything. It changes everything. The contract was fake. Your feelings aren't. His feelings aren't. You think I didn't see the way he looked at you at that gala? The man is in love with you." "He said that," Lena whispered. "On the beach. He told me he loved me." "And what did you say?" "Nothing. I didn't say anything because I was too scared." She pulled away from Maya, wrapped her arms around herself. "And now it's too late. Now everyone knows the truth, and there's no way to fix this. There's always a way to fix things. You just have to decide if you want to." "I don't know what I want anymore." Maya was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Where's Daniel now?" "His office. He's been in there since Monday. I think he's sleeping there too. He hasn't been home except to see Ethan, and even then he barely looks at me." "Have you tried talking to him?" "What would I say? Sorry I ruined your life? Sorry your grandmother hates both of us now? Sorry the entire city thinks you're pathetic for having to pay someone to date you?" "How about I love you too?" Lena's breath caught. "I can't." "Why not?" "Because what if it's not enough? What if we try and fail and end up hating each other? What if—" She stopped, swallowed hard. "What if I'm not worth fighting for?" "Oh, honey," Maya pulled her into a hug. "You're worth fighting for. You've always been worth fighting for. You just need to start believing it." That night, Lena lay awake listening to the sounds of the penthouse. Daniel had come home around midnight. She'd heard the front door, heard him check on Ethan, heard his footsteps pause outside her door before continuing to his own room. She wanted to go to him, wanted to knock on his door and tell him everything Maya had said, tell him that she was terrified but willing to try, tell him that she loved him too. But fear kept her frozen in bed, staring at the ceiling, letting the moment slip away. On Thursday morning, Patricia knocked on Lena's door with an expression that meant business. "We need to talk about your options," she said without preamble. "My options?" "For leaving. The contract specifies 2 weeks' notice for early termination, but given the circumstances, Mr. Hayes is willing to waive that requirement. He'll still honor the first payment, the $250,000 you received upon signing. You can leave today if you want to." The words hit like a punch to the gut. "He wants me to leave? He wants you to have the choice. He doesn't want you to feel trapped here while the media circus continues." Patricia's expression softened slightly. "For what it's worth, I think you should stay. I think you should fight for this. But that's not my decision to make." "Does he want me to stay?" "That's a question you should ask him yourself." But Lena didn't ask him, because Daniel was avoiding her as carefully as she was avoiding him. They moved through the penthouse like ghosts, always just missing each other, communicating through Patricia and careful notes about Ethan's schedule. The only time they were forced together was Friday afternoon, when Daniel's lawyer called an emergency meeting about the leak investigation. They sat on opposite ends of the conference table in Daniel's home office, while the lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Rebecca, laid out what they'd found. "The leak came from someone inside Hayes Capital Management," Rebecca said. "We tracked the digital fingerprints on the document back to an IP address registered to your cousin Thomas's assistant." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Thomas. We believe he instructed his assistant to access your private files and forward the contract to the media. His motivation appears to be, Rebecca consulted her notes, jealousy over the family trust distribution and resentment about being passed over for the CFO position last year. Can we prosecute? Daniel asked. Yes. The NDA violation alone carries significant penalties. But Mr. Hayes, I have to advise you that a lawsuit will keep this story in the news for months, possibly years. It will be ugly and public and will drag up everything you've been trying to protect. Lena watched Daniel's face as he processed this. She could see the calculation happening behind his eyes, weighing options, considering consequences. Do it anyway, he said finally. I'm done letting people walk all over me because I'm trying to avoid bad press. Thomas violated a legal agreement and tried to ruin my reputation. He should face consequences. Understood. I'll file the paperwork. Rebecca closed her laptop. There's one more thing. The media is requesting a statement from both of you. A joint interview, if possible. Something to control the narrative. No, Daniel and Lena said simultaneously. They looked at each other for the first time in days. I'm not going on TV to explain myself, Daniel said. Neither am I, Lena added. Rebecca sighed. Then prepare for the speculation to continue. People will fill in the blanks with their own assumptions, and I promise you won't like what they come up with. After Rebecca left, Daniel and Lena sat in heavy silence. I should probably go, Lena said finally. Wait, Daniel's voice stopped her at the door. We need to talk about what happens next. I know, Patricia told me about the early termination option. Is that what you want, to leave? Lena turned to face him. He looked exhausted, like he hadn't slept properly in days. There were shadows under his eyes and tension in every line of his body. I don't know what I want, she admitted. A week ago, I thought I did. I thought we could make this work somehow, but now my grandmother won't speak to me. My family thinks I'm a joke. My son has heard kids at preschool talking about his dad paying someone to be his girlfriend. Daniel's voice was hollow. And you're looking at me like you can't wait to get out of here. That's not fair. Isn't it? You've been avoiding me for 4 days, Lena. You won't even look at me during Ethan's bedtime. You're already halfway gone. Because I don't know what to say. I don't know how to fix this. Maybe it can't be fixed, Daniel said quietly. Maybe we were kidding ourselves thinking this could work. Maybe the whole thing was a mistake from the beginning. The words felt like they were tearing something open in Lena's chest. Is that what you really think? I think I asked you to lie to the person I love most in the world. I think I dragged you into my mess and convinced myself it was okay because we had feelings for each other. I think... He stopped, swallowed hard. I think I made you complicit in something that hurt people, and I can't forgive myself for that. Daniel, you should leave, Lena. Not because I want you to, but because you deserve better than this. Better than cameras outside your building and strangers calling you names online. Better than being collateral damage in my family's dysfunction. What about what we talked about in Montauk? What about trying for something real? That was before everything fell apart. Daniel looked at her with such sadness it made her throat tight. How can we build something real on a foundation of lies? Lena wanted to argue, wanted to tell him they could figure it out, wanted to fight for this. But the exhaustion in his eyes and the weight of everything that had happened pressed down on her until she couldn't find the words. I'll pack my things, she heard herself say. Daniel nodded once, sharp and final. I'll have Patricia arrange movers for tomorrow. He left before she could change her mind. Lena made it back to her room before the tears came. She cried for Eleanor's broken trust, for Ethan who would wake up one day and she'd be gone, for Daniel who looked like he was breaking apart. But mostly she cried for herself, for the coward she was being, for walking away instead of fighting. That evening, Ethan found her packing. Where are you going? He asked from the doorway, clutching his Spinosaurus. Lena's hand stilled on the sweater she'd been folding. Hey, buddy, I'm going back to my old apartment for a while. Why? How did you explain a scandal to a 4-year-old? How did you tell a child that everything they'd believed was a lie? Sometimes grown-ups need space, Lena said carefully. Your dad and we need to figure some things out. Are you mad at Daddy? No, sweetheart. I'm not mad at him. Is he mad at you? It's complicated. Ethan climbed onto the bed, watching her pack with serious eyes. Miss Jenny, at school, says her mom and dad used to fight a lot and then her dad moved away. Is that what's happening? Your dad isn't going anywhere. He loves you so much, Ethan. This doesn't change that. What about you? Do you love me? The question broke her. Lena set down the sweater and pulled Ethan into her arms. So much. I love you so much. Then why are you leaving? Because sometimes loving someone isn't enough. Sometimes there are other things that make it too hard to stay. That's stupid, Ethan said with the blunt honesty of childhood. If you love each other, you should stay together. That's what they do in stories. Real life isn't like stories, buddy. It should be. Lena held him until he squirmed away, then watched him trudge back to his room, dragging his dinosaur behind him. She felt like the worst person in the world. She was almost finished packing when Daniel appeared in her doorway again. He's asking for you, Daniel said quietly. For bedtime. He wants you to do the T-Rex voice one more time. They walked to Ethan's room together, maintaining careful distance. Ethan was already in bed, his dinosaur collection lined up on the nightstand. Will you both read to me? He asked. Like you did that one time when I was sick? Daniel looked at Lena. Lena looked at the floor. Please? Ethan's voice was small. Just one more time? They ended up on either side of Ethan's bed, reading a story about dinosaurs exploring a new world. Lena did the voices, Daniel turned the pages, and Ethan fell asleep between them with a small smile on his face. He's gonna miss you, Daniel said after they'd turned off the light and stepped into the hallway. I'll miss him too. Lena, Daniel stopped, seemed to struggle with something. Before you go, there's something I need to say. Daniel, don't. I need to say it. I need you to know that what I told you in Montauk was true. I do love you. I fell in love with you somewhere between the champagne glass and the dinosaur voices, and the moment you stayed up all night with my sick kid. And I know the timing is terrible and the circumstances are impossible, but it's true. Lena's eyes were burning. Why are you telling me this now? Because if you walk out that door tomorrow, I want you to know it wasn't because I didn't love you enough. It was because I loved you too much to keep you trapped in this mess. He reached out, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear with infinite gentleness. You deserve someone who can give you a normal life. Someone who doesn't come with paparazzi and family scandals and a complicated kid. Ethan's not complicated. He's perfect. He is. And he loves you. And that's going to make this so much harder for him. Then why are we doing this? Lena's voice broke. Why are we giving up? Because sometimes love isn't enough. You said it yourself. I was wrong. The words burst out before she could stop them. I was scared and overwhelmed, and I said something I didn't mean. Daniel, Her phone rang, cutting through the moment. Eleanor's name on the screen again. They both froze. Answer it, Daniel said. She deserves to hear from you. Lena answered with shaking hands. Eleanor? I need to see you. Eleanor's voice was weak, weaker than Lena had ever heard it. Both of you. Tomorrow. It's important. Are you okay? Do you need us to come now? Tomorrow is fine. Come for lunch. 1 o'clock. She paused. And Lena? Bring tissues. We're going to need them. The line went dead. Daniel and Lena stared at each other in the dim hallway. That sounded ominous, Lena said. Everything with my grandmother is ominous lately. But Daniel's face had gone pale. What if this is it? What if she's calling us there to say goodbye? We don't know that. We don't know anything anymore. They stood in silence, the weight of everything unsaid pressing down on them. I'll still be here tomorrow morning, Lena said finally. For this. After, we can figure out the rest. Okay. Neither of them moved. Daniel, what you said before, don't. Not right now. He stepped back, creating distance. I can't hear whatever you're about to say, and still function tomorrow. Let's get through lunch with my grandmother. Then we can talk. He disappeared into his room before Lena could respond. She went back to her own room, to the half-packed suitcases and the life she was supposed to be leaving. But instead of continuing to pack, she sat on the edge of the bed and pulled out her phone. There was a text from Maya. You okay? Lena typed back, no. But I'm going to be. Then she opened her notes app and started writing everything she needed to say to Daniel. All the words she'd been too scared to speak, all the feelings she'd been too proud to admit. She wrote until her hands cramped and her vision blurred, until she'd poured out every truth she'd been holding back. Tomorrow, she decided. Tomorrow she would tell him everything. Tomorrow she would stop being a coward. Tomorrow she would fight. The drive to Eleanor's house the next day was suffocating. Daniel drove in silence, his hands white-knuckled on the steering wheel. Ethan was with Marcus for the day. They'd decided this conversation wasn't appropriate for a 4-year-old, which somehow made the SUV feel even more empty. Whatever she says, Lena started. I know. I just mean we should be prepared for anything. I know, Lena. They lapsed back into silence. Eleanor met them at the door herself, which was the first surprise. She looked smaller than Lena remembered, frailer, but her eyes were as sharp as ever. Come in, she said. We have things to discuss. She led them to the sunroom where they'd looked at her paintings during the birthday party. The room was flooded with afternoon light, making the watercolors on the walls glow. Eleanor settled into her chair with visible effort. Sit, both of you. They sat on the couch across from her, maintaining careful distance from each other. I'm going to say something, Eleanor began, and you're both going to listen without interrupting. Understood? They nodded. I was furious with you when I found out about the contract. Hurt, betrayed. I spent 3 days refusing to take your calls because I was so angry I couldn't see straight. Eleanor's gaze moved between them. But then I got a call from Marcus. He told me about the leak, about your cousin Thomas, about how you're suing him even though it will keep this story in the news. And I realized something. She paused, and Lena's heart was hammering. I realized that a man who was truly just paying for appearances wouldn't care that much about protecting someone's reputation. He'd cut his losses and move on. Eleanor looked at Daniel. But you didn't do that. You're fighting for her. Even now, when everything has fallen apart, you're still fighting. Grandma, I said no interrupting, but her voice was gentle. And you? She turned to Lena. Marcus told me you've been refusing interviews, turning down 6-figure offers from tabloids who want your side of the story. Why? Lena's throat was tight. Because it's not their business. Because Daniel doesn't deserve to have his privacy violated more than it already has been. Even though leaving quietly would be easier for you, even though you could take the money and disappear, I don't want to disappear. The words hung in the air. Eleanor smiled. There it is. The truth that you've both been dancing around for weeks. You don't want to leave, and Daniel doesn't want you to go. So why are you letting fear make this decision for you? It's not that simple, Daniel said. It's exactly that simple. You love her. She loves you. Everything else is just noise. The noise includes the fact that our entire relationship is built on a lie, Lena said, that I took money to pretend to care about your grandson. Except you stopped pretending somewhere along the way, didn't you? Eleanor's eyes were knowing. I saw it at my birthday party. The way you looked at each other when you thought no one was watching. The way you fit together like you'd been doing this for years, not weeks. That doesn't change how it started, Daniel said quietly. No, it doesn't. But it changes what it became. Eleanor leaned forward. I'm 92 years old. I've been married, widowed, and watched more people than I can count make the same mistake you're making right now. They let pride and fear convince them that love isn't worth fighting for. They walk away from the best thing that ever happened to them because the beginning was messy, or the timing was wrong, or other people had opinions. What if we try and it doesn't work? Lena asked. What if we hurt each other worse than we already have? Then you'll survive. People survive heartbreak every day. But you know what you don't survive? Regret. Wondering what could have been if you'd just been brave enough to try. Tears were streaming down Lena's face. I'm sorry for lying to you, for taking advantage of your trust, for... Stop! Eleanor's voice was firm. I forgive you, both of you. The contract was a stupid idea, Daniel, and you know it, but it gave you something you needed, permission to let someone in. And Lena, it gave you a chance to see that you're capable of being loved by someone good. So take the gift and stop apologizing for how you got it. Daniel's voice was rough. What are you saying, Grandma? I'm saying that I don't have time left to watch you two be idiots. I'm saying that life is short and love is rare, and you'd both be fools to walk away from each other because the story doesn't fit some perfect narrative. She sat back, looking exhausted but satisfied. I'm saying fight for this. Fix it. And when you do, I want to be at the wedding." The word wedding hung in the air like a promise. We haven't even," Daniel stammered. "Not yet. But you will," Eleanor smiled. "Call it a dying woman's intuition." They sat in stunned silence. Then Lena started laughing, big, gasping laughs that turned into sobs halfway through. Daniel pulled her against him without thinking, and she buried her face in his shoulder. "I'm sorry," she gasped against his shirt. "I'm sorry I was going to leave. I'm sorry I didn't fight for this. I'm sorry." "Shh. I'm sorry too." Daniel's arms tightened around her. "I should have told you how I felt earlier. Should have fought harder. Should have—" "You're both sorry. We've established that." Eleanor's voice was dry. "Now kiss and make up so I can die in peace." "Grandma!" Daniel looked scandalized. "What? I'm old. I can say whatever I want." But she was smiling. "Go on, kiss her. I want to see it." Lena pulled back just enough to look at Daniel. His eyes were red, his hair was a mess, and he looked like he'd been through hell. He was the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen. "I love you," she said. "I should have said it in Montauk. Should have said it 100 times since then. But I was scared and stupid and—" Daniel kissed her, cutting off the words. It was soft and desperate and tasted like salt and promises. When they finally broke apart, Eleanor was dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. "About time," she said. "Now get out of here. Go home. Fix your life. And Daniel?" "Yes, Grandma?" "Throw away that ridiculous contract. If you're going to be together because you want to, not because some piece of paper says you have to." They left hand in hand, and for the first time in a week, Lena felt like she could breathe. In the car, Daniel said, "She's right, about the contract." "I know." "So we're doing this? Really doing this? No more pretending, no more performance, just us figuring it out as we go?" "Just us," Lena agreed. "Though I should warn you, I'm a mess. I'm broke and scared, and I have no idea how to navigate your world. And I'm emotionally closed off and terrible at communicating, and I come with a 4-year-old who will absolutely use you to get extra dessert." Sounds perfect. They drove home through Manhattan traffic, their hands linked across the center console, and Lena thought about Eleanor's words, about fighting for something worth having, about being brave enough to choose love even when it was terrifying. "Hey, Daniel." "Yeah?" "I'm keeping the money from the contract. Is that weird?" He laughed, a real laugh, the first one she'd heard in days. "You earned it. You put up with my family, my grandmother's interrogation, and 4 weeks of media training from Patricia. You absolutely earned it. I'm going to use it to start my own design studio. Do the kind of work I actually care about instead of just taking whatever pays." "That's perfect." He squeezed her hand. "And you can work from the penthouse. There's plenty of space." "Daniel Hayes, are you asking me to move in with you?" "I'm asking you to stay. Officially. Not because of a contract, but because I love you. And I want you in my life." "What about Ethan? We should probably talk to him about this." "We will, but I think he's going to be pretty excited. He's been asking when you're moving into the big bedroom for weeks now." Lena felt her face heat. "About that, one step at a time," Daniel said quickly. "We don't have to rush anything. We can take this as slow as you need." "What if I don't want to take it slow?" He glanced at her, eyebrows raised. "Then we'll figure that out too." They pulled into the building's garage, and for a moment they just sat there, hands still linked, looking at each other. "I can't believe this is real," Lena said softly. "It's real. No more contracts, no more pretending. Just this." "Just this," she echoed. And when he kissed her this time, it felt like coming home. Telling Ethan turned out to be both easier and harder than Lena expected. They sat him down that evening after dinner, the 3 of them on the couch in the living room. Ethan had his Spinosaurus clutched in one hand and was looking between them with the kind of serious expression that made him look older than 4. "Am I in trouble?" he asked. "Nobody," Daniel said. "We just want to talk to you about something important." "Is Lena leaving?" His voice got small. "Because I heard you packing yesterday, and Miss Amy said sometimes people leave and don't come back." Lena's heart broke a little. "I'm not leaving, sweetheart. Actually, I'm going to stay, if that's okay with you." Ethan's face lit up. "Really? Forever?" "Well," Lena glanced at Daniel, who nodded encouragingly. "For a really long time. Your dad and I, we care about each other. We want to be together. But that means some things are going to change. What things? Like I'll be here all the time now. Not because of work, but because I want to be. And your dad and I, we're going to be dating, for real this time. Ethan thought about this for a moment. Like the mommies and daddies at school who kiss when they pick up their kids? Kind of like that, Daniel said carefully. Okay. Ethan shrugged with the easy acceptance of childhood. Can we have mac and cheese for dinner tomorrow? Lena laughed, the tension draining from her shoulders. Sure, buddy. We can have mac and cheese. The kind from the blue box? The kind from the blue box. Cool. He slid off the couch. Can I go play dinosaurs now? Yeah, you can go play. They watched him run off to his room, and Daniel exhaled slowly. That went better than expected, he said. He's 4. Everything is simple when you're 4. Lena leaned against him. It's going to get more complicated as he gets older. We should probably think about therapy or something. Make sure he processes all this in a healthy way. Already on it. Patricia found a child psychologist who specializes in family transitions. First appointment is next week. Of course she did. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Daniel said, I need to make a statement about the leak, about us, about everything. My PR team has been pushing for one all week. What are you going to say? The truth. Or as much of it as I can without violating your privacy. He pulled out his phone, showed her a draft. I want you to read it first. Make sure you're comfortable with everything. Lena took the phone and read. Over the past week, my personal life has become public in ways I never intended. I want to address the speculation directly. Yes, Lena Carter and I initially entered into a contractual arrangement. It was a misguided attempt to give my dying grandmother peace of mind, and I take full responsibility for that decision. However, what began as a contract became something real. I fell in love with Lena, truly, deeply, and completely. The circumstances of how we met don't change the authenticity of what we feel for each other. I'm asking for privacy as we navigate this next chapter together. My family has been through enough, and Lena deserves to be treated with respect, not as fodder for tabloid speculation. To those who have supported us, thank you. To those who haven't, I understand, but I hope you'll give us the chance to prove that love can emerge from even the most unlikely beginnings. Regarding the leak of confidential documents, legal action is underway. I will not tolerate violations of privacy, whether they target me or those I care about. It's good, Lena said softly. Honest without being too revealing. Are you sure? Because once this goes out, there's no taking it back. People will know we're really together. They'll have opinions. Some of them won't be kind. Let them have opinions. I'm done caring what strangers think. She handed back his phone. Post it. He did, right there on the couch with Lena tucked against his side. Within minutes, the responses started rolling in, some supportive, some skeptical, some still cruel, but there were also messages from friends and colleagues, from people who'd followed the story and were genuinely rooting for them. Maya texted, Finally, I was about to fly over there and knock your heads together. Marcus sent a gif of someone doing a victory dance with the caption, Told Daniel you were perfect for him. Nobody listens to me. And then, unexpectedly, a text from Eleanor. Well done, grandson. Now stop reading the comments and go kiss your girl. Daniel laughed and did exactly that. The next few weeks were a strange adjustment period. The media attention didn't disappear overnight. There were still photographers outside the building occasionally, still gossip columns speculating about their relationship. But slowly, gradually, other stories took precedence and the intensity faded. Lena started working from the penthouse, setting up a studio in one of the spare bedrooms. She turned down the safe corporate clients and started taking on projects she actually cared about. Book covers for independent publishers, branding for small nonprofits, art for local businesses that couldn't afford big agencies. The money from the contract sat in her bank account like a safety net, giving her the freedom to say no to work that drained her soul. Daniel went back to his regular office hours, though he made a point of being home for dinner every night. It was a change from his previous routine, and Lena could see Patricia adjusting to it with bemused efficiency. Mr. Hayes has a board meeting at 5:30, Patricia said one Tuesday afternoon. Reschedule it, Daniel replied without looking up from the dinosaur puzzle he was doing with Ethan. It's with the Tokyo investors. They're only available, Patricia. Reschedule it. He looked up, his expression gentle but firm. I made a promise to be home for dinner. That means something. Patricia's lips twitched into something that might have been a smile. Of course, Mr. Hayes, I'll handle it. After she left, Lena said, You know she's going to tell everyone you've gone soft? Let her. I've been hard for too long. It's exhausting. Ethan looked up from the puzzle. What does hard mean? It means your dad is learning to relax, Lena said quickly. Which is a good thing. Oh, okay. Ethan went back to searching for corner pieces. But the adjustment wasn't always smooth. There were moments when Lena felt overwhelmed by the sheer difference in their lifestyles. Like when Daniel casually mentioned buying a vacation home in the Hamptons, or when she accidentally broke a vase that turned out to be worth $15,000. It's just a vase, Daniel had said when she'd stood there in horror, staring at the pieces. It's a $15,000 vase. It was a $15,000 vase. Now it's broken glass. These things happen. These things don't happen in my world. In my world, I'd have to work for 6 months to replace something like this. Daniel had pulled her away from the broken glass, made her sit down, taken her hands in his. Lena, I need you to hear me. That vase meant nothing to me. You mean everything. If you break every piece of expensive crap in this penthouse, I will not care. Things can be replaced. You can't. She'd cried then, not because of the vase, but because of everything it represented. All the ways their worlds were different. All the ways she still felt like an imposter in his life. What if I can't do this? She'd whispered. What if I can't be the person you need me to be? You already are that person. You think I need someone who knows which fork to use at a charity dinner? I need someone who stays up all night with my sick kid. Someone who calls me out when I'm being an idiot. Someone who makes me remember that life is about more than just work and responsibility. I broke your vase. I never liked it anyway. My ex-wife's mother gave it to us as a wedding gift. I've been looking for an excuse to get rid of it for years. That had made her laugh through the tears, and they'd ended up making out on the couch like teenagers until Ethan wandered in asking for juice, and they'd had to spring apart guiltily. It was messy and imperfect, and sometimes overwhelming, but it was real, and that mattered more than Lena had ever thought possible. 3 weeks after Daniel's statement went public, they took Ethan to visit Eleanor. She'd been moved to hospice care, her decision made with the kind of pragmatic clarity that characterized everything she did. I'm not dying in a hospital, she'd told Daniel over the phone. Hospitals are depressing. I want flowers and sunshine and my own damn pillows. The hospice was in Westchester, a beautiful facility that looked more like a boutique hotel than a medical facility. Eleanor had a suite overlooking gardens that were preparing for winter, with her watercolors hung on the walls and her 3 cats curled up on various pieces of furniture. There's my boy, she said when Daniel carried Ethan in. Her voice was weaker than it had been, but her smile was genuine. And my future granddaughter. Lena's face heated. Eleanor? What? You think I don't know what's coming? I'm dying, not blind. She patted the bed beside her. Sit. Tell me everything. They spent 2 hours with her, talking about everything and nothing. Ethan showed her the drawing he'd made at school, a family portrait that included Daniel, Lena, himself, and approximately 17 dinosaurs. Eleanor declared it a masterpiece and insisted it be hung on her wall immediately. When Ethan got restless and Daniel took him to explore the gardens, Eleanor reached for Lena's hand. I need to tell you something, she said. Okay. I'm glad it was you. I'm glad Daniel found someone who sees him, really sees him, and loves him anyway. He spent so much of his life trying to be perfect, trying to live up to impossible standards. He needed someone who could show him that being broken is okay, that you can fall apart and still be worthy of love. Lena's throat was tight. He showed me that too. I've spent years thinking I wasn't enough, not talented enough, not successful enough, not worthy of taking up space in the world. And then I crashed into his life and he looked at me like I was exactly what he'd been waiting for. You were. You both were exactly what the other needed. Eleanor squeezed her hand weakly. Take care of them, Lena. My boys. They're going to need you when I'm gone. I will, I promise. And don't let Daniel work too much. He has a tendency to bury himself in the office when he's grieving. Make him come home. Make him live. I will. Eleanor's eyes drifted closed. Good. That's good. Now go find them. Tell Daniel I want to paint with Ethan tomorrow. While I still can. Lena found them in his gardens. Daniel pushing Ethan on a swing while the boy shrieked with laughter. She stood watching them for a moment, this man and this child who'd become her whole world in just a few short months. Daniel saw her and smiled, that real smile that he saved just for her and Ethan, the one that made him look younger and lighter and free. "Everything okay?" he called. "Everything's perfect," Lena called back and meant it. Eleanor died 2 weeks later, on a Tuesday morning with sunshine streaming through her windows and her family surrounding her bed. She went peacefully, holding Daniel's hand and whispering something to him that made him cry. The funeral was massive. Hundreds of people who'd been touched by her life, her generosity, her fierce love for her family. Daniel gave a eulogy that had everyone in tears, talking about how his grandmother had saved him after his parents died, how she'd held him together after Sarah's death, how she'd taught him that strength meant letting people in, not keeping them out. "She was the strongest person I knew," Daniel said, his voice steady despite the tears on his face. "And her dying wish wasn't for money or recognition or any kind of legacy. She just wanted to know that I would be okay, that I would let myself be loved." He looked at Lena sitting in the front row with Ethan. "Grandma, wherever you are, I'm okay. You made sure of it. Thank you." Lena held Ethan during the service, explaining death in simple terms when he asked where Grandma Eleanor had gone. He cried a little, but mostly he seemed confused by the sadness around him. "Is Daddy sad because Grandma went to heaven?" he asked. "Yes, sweetheart. He's very sad. It's okay to be sad when someone you love goes away." "Are you sad too?" "I am. I'm going to miss her a lot." Ethan thought about this. "When I'm sad, you and Daddy give me hugs. Should we give Daddy hugs?" "I think that's a great idea." After the service, after the reception where Daniel shook hands and accepted condolences and held himself together with visible effort, they went home. Ethan fell asleep in the car, exhausted from the emotional day. Daniel carried him inside while Lena handled the coats and bags. Once Ethan was tucked into bed, Daniel disappeared into his room. Lena gave him space for a while, but when an hour passed and he hadn't emerged, she knocked softly on his door. "Daniel? Can I come in?" Silence. Then, "Yeah." She found him sitting on the edge of his bed, still in his suit, staring at nothing. His eyes were red and his hands were shaking slightly. "I don't know how to do this," he said quietly. "I don't know how to exist in a world where she's not there anymore." Lena sat beside him, took his hand. "One day at a time. 1 hour at a time if you need to." She was the last connection to my parents, the last person who remembered them the way I do. And now she's gone and I feel like I'm completely untethered. You're not untethered. You have Ethan, you have me, you have a whole life full of people who love you. What if I can't do this? What if I fall apart and can't put myself back together? Then I'll help you. That's what love is, Daniel. It's not about being strong all the time. It's about letting someone catch you when you fall. He turned to her and the grief in his eyes was devastating. "I'm so tired of falling." "I know, but you don't have to do it alone anymore." He broke then, really broke, sobbing against her shoulder while she held him and whispered that it was okay, that she had him, that he was safe. They stayed like that until the tears ran out and he was left hollow and exhausted. "Come on," Lena said gently. "Let's get you into bed." She helped him out of his suit, found comfortable clothes in his drawer, made him drink water even though he said he wasn't thirsty. Then she climbed into bed with him, the first time she'd been in his room since that night weeks ago when everything had fallen apart. "Stay," he whispered. "I'm not going anywhere." She held him while he fell asleep, and at some point she drifted off too, waking hours later to find him watching her in the dim light from the windows. "Hi," she said softly. "Hi." His voice was rough from crying. "Thank you. For today. For all of this." "You don't have to thank me." "I do. You didn't sign up for this, for helping me through grief and taking care of my kid and dealing with my mess of a family. Actually, I kind of did. That was in the contract, remember? Support during family events." That surprised a laugh out of him. "Pretty sure the contract expired weeks ago." "Then I'm here because I want to be, because I love you and Ethan and this complicated, messy life we're building together." Daniel pulled her closer, pressed his forehead to hers. "I love you too. I don't say it enough, but I do. You saved me, Lena. You and that ridiculous silver dress and your terrible sense of direction. It was a good dress. Maya picked it out. It was a $30 dress that changed my life. That's the most romantic thing anyone's ever said about discount fashion. He kissed her then, soft and slow and full of promise. And for the first time since Eleanor's death, Lena felt like everything might actually be okay. The next few months were a process. Daniel grieved in waves. Some days he was fine, functioning normally, laughing at Ethan's jokes and working long hours. Other days he'd wake up with that hollow look in his eyes, and Lena would quietly rearrange both their schedules so they could just be together. She learned his grief rhythms, learned when he needed space and when he needed holding, learned the difference between productive solitude and destructive isolation. And slowly, gradually, she watched him heal. Ethan helped more than anyone expected. His innocence, his constant questions, his inability to stay sad for long, all of it forced Daniel to keep living, keep engaging, keep showing up even when it hurt. "Daddy, can we go to the museum?" Ethan asked one Saturday morning, about 3 months after Eleanor's funeral. "Miss Jenny says there's a new dinosaur exhibit." Daniel was staring at his coffee, that distant look in his eyes that meant he was thinking about his grandmother. But at Ethan's question, he focused. "Yeah, buddy, we can go to the museum. Can Lena come?" Of course Lena can come. She's family now. The word family hit Lena in the chest. She met Daniel's eyes across the table and saw everything she needed to see there. They went to the museum, the three of them, and spent 4 hours looking at dinosaurs and doing the voiceover narration that had become their tradition. Other families smiled at them in that knowing way that said they recognized the dynamic. Two parents and their kid having a perfectly normal Saturday. And maybe that's what they were now. Not billionaire and contracted girlfriend, not scandal and recovery, just a family figuring it out as they went. That evening, after Ethan was asleep, Daniel found Lena in her studio. She'd been working on a painting, something she hadn't done in years, but grief had a way of making you crave creation. "That's beautiful," he said, looking at the canvas. It was the view from the penthouse windows, the city at twilight, all light and shadow. "Thanks. I'm out of practice, but it feels good to paint again." Eleanor would have loved it. His voice caught slightly on her name. "She kept asking me if you were still painting, said she wanted to see your work." I wish I'd shown her. I wish I'd had more time with her. Me too. Daniel moved to stand behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. But I think she knew how much we cared about her, how much she meant to us. They stood like that for a while, watching the city lights flicker on one by one. "I've been thinking," Daniel said eventually, "about the future, about what comes next." "Okay. I want to start a foundation, in Eleanor's name, focus on arts education for underprivileged kids. She always said art saved her life when she was young, and I want to give other kids that same chance." Lena turned in his arms to face him. "That's perfect. She would love that. I want you to run it. You have the background, the passion, the understanding of what it's like to struggle as an artist. You'd be perfect." "Daniel, I don't know anything about running a foundation." "You'll learn. We'll hire people who know the logistics. But the vision, the heart of it, that should be yours." He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "What do you say? Want to quit graphic design and change some lives?" Lena's heart was pounding. "You're serious?" "Completely. I've already talked to my lawyers about the structure. We could launch by fall if you're interested." "I'm interested. I'm terrified, but I'm interested." "Good. Because I also have another question." Something in his tone made her breath catch. "What question?" Daniel stepped back and then, impossibly, he was dropping to one knee. Lena's hands flew to her mouth. "Daniel, I know this is fast. I know we've only been really together for a few months. I know that normal people wait years before doing this." He pulled a small box from his pocket. "But nothing about us has ever been normal. We started with a contract and a lie and somehow built something real anyway. And I don't want to waste any more time pretending to be cautious when I know exactly what I want." "Daniel, Lena Carter, you fell into my life when I least expected it and most needed it. You made me remember how to feel. You gave my son someone who loves him completely. You held me together when I was falling apart and called me out when I was being an idiot. You're messy and imperfect and you break expensive vases and do terrible dinosaur impressions, and I love every single thing about you." He opened the box. The ring inside was simple and beautiful. A single diamond on a platinum band, elegant without being ostentatious. "Will you marry me? Will you take this broken billionaire and his dinosaur-obsessed kid and build a life with us? No contract this time. Just love. Just choice. Just us figuring it out together." Lena was crying, ugly crying, the kind that made her nose run and her face blotchy. "Yes. Yes, of course, yes." Daniel stood, slid the ring onto her finger with shaking hands, and kissed her while she laughed and cried and tried to remember how to breathe. "I love you," she said against his mouth. "I love you so much." "I love you too, and I promise, no more contracts, no more hiding, just truth from here on out." "Just truth," she agreed. From down the hall they heard a small voice. "Are you guys kissing again? Can I have juice?" They broke apart laughing. Daniel called back, "Yeah, buddy, you can have juice, and we have something to tell you." They told Ethan together, sitting on his bed with the dinosaur nightlight casting shadows on the walls. He listened with wide eyes as Daniel explained that Lena was going to be part of their family forever now, that she was going to marry Daddy. "Does that mean Lena will be my mommy?" Ethan asked. Lena's breath caught. They'd avoided that word carefully, not wanting to replace Sarah's memory. "Lena will be Lena," Daniel said gently. "She'll love you and take care of you and be part of our family, but your mom, your first mom, she'll always be your mom too. Nobody's trying to replace her." "Can I have two moms? Like Jake at school has two dads?" "You can have whatever family configuration makes you happy, buddy." Ethan thought about this seriously. Then he looked at Lena. "Will you read me dinosaur books? Every night if you want. And do the T-Rex voice. The best T-Rex voice you've ever heard. Okay, then you can be my second mom." He paused. "But I'm going to keep calling you Lena because that's your name." "That works perfectly for me," Lena said, her voice thick with emotion. Ethan seemed satisfied with this arrangement. "Can we have cake tomorrow? When people get married on TV, there's always cake." "We're not getting married tomorrow, buddy," Daniel said, laughing. "But yes, when we do get married, there will definitely be cake." "Good," Ethan yawned. "Can I go back to sleep now?" They tucked him in again, and as they walked back down the hall, Lena said, "That went better than expected." "He's 4. Everything is simple when you're 4. "You stole my line. I learned from the best." They ended up in Daniel's room. Their room now, Lena supposed, since she'd been sleeping there more often than not lately. She looked at the ring on her finger, still not quite believing it was real. "When do you want to do this?" she asked. "The wedding, I mean." "Whenever you want. We can do something big or something small, whatever makes you happy. I want Eleanor to be there." The words came out before Lena could think them through, and she immediately regretted them. "I'm sorry, that was stupid. She's gone." "No." Daniel's voice was rough. "It wasn't stupid. I want her there too." He pulled Lena close. "We'll find a way to honor her. Maybe get married at the beach house in Montauk, where we had that last good weekend with her. Maybe ask the officiant to mention her in the ceremony. Something. She'd probably tell us we're being too sentimental." "Absolutely. And then she'd cry anyway because she was secretly a softie." They stood together by the windows, looking out at the city where they'd met, where everything had started with one wrong turn and one broken glass. "Do you ever think about how different things would be if I'd gotten off on the right floor that night?" Lena asked. "Every day. And every day I'm grateful you didn't. Even with everything that happened, the scandal, the pain, all of it, especially with all of that. It taught me that nothing worth having comes easy. That love requires risk and vulnerability and being willing to look like an idiot sometimes." He turned her to face him. "You were worth all of it, Lena. You and this life we're building, it's worth everything." She kissed him then, deep and slow, tasting promise and future and home. They got married 6 months later on a beautiful September afternoon at the Montauk house. It was small, just family and close friends, maybe 40 people total. Maya was Lena's maid of honor, Marcus stood up for Daniel, and Ethan served as ring bearer with the kind of serious concentration that made everyone smile. The ceremony was on the beach, with the ocean as their backdrop. Lena wore a simple white dress, nothing like the designer gowns Patricia had tried to push her toward. Daniel wore a navy suit with his shirt open at the collar, looking relaxed and happy, and more like himself than Lena had ever seen him. The officiant mentioned Eleanor in the ceremony, talking about how she'd brought them together in her own unconventional way, how she'd taught them that love was worth fighting for even when the beginning was messy. When it came time for the vows, Daniel went first. Lena, when you fell into my apartment that night, I thought you were just another disaster in a life full of them. Turns out you were the best disaster that ever happened to me. You taught me that being broken doesn't mean being worthless, that asking for help isn't weakness, that love can grow in the strangest places if you're brave enough to let it. His voice caught. You gave me back my life. You gave Ethan a mother who loves him fiercely, and you gave me a future I'd stopped believing in. I promised to spend the rest of my life proving that you made the right choice. I promised to do the dinosaur voices even when I'm too tired. I promised to let you win arguments sometimes. And I promised to love you, not in spite of your imperfections, but because of them. Because perfect is boring and you are anything but boring. People laughed through their tears. Lena was crying so hard she could barely see. Daniel, she started, then had to stop and collect herself. I came to New York 5 years ago thinking I knew what I wanted. Success, recognition, validation that my art mattered. And then I crashed into your world and realized I'd been chasing the wrong things entirely. You showed me that what I really wanted was connection, love, a place to belong. She looked at Ethan, standing beside them with the rings. You both showed me that family isn't about blood or contracts or perfect circumstances. It's about choosing each other every day, choosing to stay even when things get hard, choosing to build something real instead of something safe. She turned back to Daniel. I choose you, today and every day after. I choose us and this messy, imperfect, beautiful life we're creating, and I promise to keep choosing it, no matter what comes. They exchanged rings, Daniel's hand shaking slightly as he slid the band onto her finger, Lena's eyes never leaving his face. By the power vested in me by the state of New York, the officiant said, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride. Daniel did, thoroughly and enthusiastically, while their guests cheered and Ethan made exaggerated gagging noises that made everyone laugh. The reception was on the house's back lawn, overlooking the ocean. They ate lobster and drank champagne and danced to a playlist Marcus had put together that was equal parts sentimental and ridiculous. At one point, Maya grabbed the microphone and gave a speech about how she'd known from the beginning that Lena and Daniel were perfect for each other, conveniently leaving out the part where she'd initially thought the contract was insane. As the sun set and the party wound down, Daniel found Lena standing at the edge of the property, looking out at the ocean. Hey, Mrs. Hayes, he said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. That's going to take some getting used to. You could keep your name. I wouldn't mind. No, I want this. I want to be part of your family, part of Ethan's family. She leaned back against him. Is this real? Tell me this is real and not some elaborate dream. It's real. You're stuck with me now, no backing out. Good, because I wasn't planning to. They stood watching the waves, and Lena thought about everything that had led to this moment. The wrong party, the broken glass, the contract that was supposed to be simple, Eleanor's wisdom, Ethan's innocence, Daniel's courage in letting her in. Nothing about their story was conventional. Nothing about it was easy. But it was theirs, built on truth and choice and the kind of love that refused to follow anyone else's rules. Hey, Daniel, she said softly. Yeah? Thank you. For what? For being weird enough to offer a stranger $500,000 to fake date you. For being broken enough to need saving. For being brave enough to fall in love with me anyway. He turned her in his arms, framed her face with his hands. Best investment I ever made. I'm pretty sure that's not how love is supposed to work. Nothing about us is how it's supposed to work. And I wouldn't change a single thing. He kissed her as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and gold. Behind them, they could hear Ethan's laughter as Marcus chased him around the lawn, hear the music and conversation of people who loved them. This was family. This was home. This was the life they'd built from lies and truth and everything in between. And standing there with the ocean breeze in her hair and Daniel's arms around her and their future stretching out impossibly bright, Lena finally understood what Eleanor had tried to tell her that day in the sunroom. Love wasn't about perfect circumstances or careful planning. It was about finding someone who saw all your broken pieces and loved you anyway. Someone who made you braver, kinder, more yourself than you'd ever been alone. It was about choosing each other every single day, even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard. And sometimes, just sometimes, it was about falling into the wrong penthouse at exactly the right moment and having the courage to stay. Lena had spent years trying to find her place in the world, trying to prove she was worthy of taking up space, but she'd been looking in all the wrong places. Her place wasn't in prestigious galleries or high-profile clients or external validation. Her place was right here, in the arms of a man who'd learned to open his heart, in the life of a little boy who needed someone to love him, in the messy, imperfect, beautiful reality of a family they were building together. She was home, and for the first time in her life, that was enough.